Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott, and thank you for tuning us in. Carole J. Obley is here. We're going to get into the wisdom. Oh, we're going to feel smart tonight. Wisdom from the spirit world. Yeah, it's going to be great. I look forward to it. And she's got funky glasses. I love her glasses. You're gonna enjoy Carol here momentarily. Let's say hello to each and every one of you first and foremost. And it starts off with saying hello to Race Fan in the gold medal position, Laura Lobbs with a silver, and B with a nice solid bronze medal tonight. Tim Mothman and his goatee, thank you for joining us. Chris 716, James Horn, Robert Lamoth, and Forrest Louie, thank you for coming on in. Hi, Bar Madison, thank you for joining us. Stephanie Kenny Blankenship, nice to see you. And there's Les Paul Holland. Les Paul Holland will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio if you don't mind. To the left of the studio, he will sign your guitars. Yes, he will. Eternity Eternal, NHI, the lovely and talented Kira. Good to see you all. Hi, Lee the Bee and Dragonfly. Good to see you both. George and Exler. How are you, my friend? Good to have you here. Nicole Sackage, thank you for joining us. Cosmic Joe, good to have you back as we continue on with our roll call tonight. Angela Gottman, welcome to SOR Chat. And who else is here? Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, so we can officially start this show and start his birthday party. Happy birthday, Doug Shelby. The Doug Shelby, aging another year. He doesn't look a day over 74. That's what Samantha, his wife, told me. Yeah, a day over 74. Thank God, Doug, you're looking good, man, for your age. Okay, continuing on here. Let's say hello to Jenny Whitebear. And who else is here? Marty Burback, Brown Dwarf. Millennium, my man, how you doing? There's Operation Shutdown. Wildberry Candy is here. Rafin, good to see you. Rafin will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio if you don't mind. To the right of the studio. Luscious Jewels, purple-haired Pixie Lara. Good to see you both. As we continue on with our roll call, Skip to Malou, good morning to you. And who else is here? Let's check the Facebook side. Hold on. It's Susan Lawrence from Indiana. How are you, Susan Lawrence from Indiana? Good to see you. Digger Dog, W. David Page, thank you for coming on in. Chris Teen, nice to see you. And who else is here? Oob to Joe's Main, you've got psychic abilities. Audacious Amber, nice to have you here. Scan Man, thank you for coming on in. Hi, Superknower. And SJ, thank you all for joining us. Al Garay over on Twitch, good to see you. He's lining up to the left of the studio to get that autograph. That's very nice. Very nice. Mike Rivers, good to have you here. And who else is joining us? Little Cam over on Twitch. Good to see you guys. Mama Susan, thanks for coming on in. Human Carl out of the hospital after major reconstructive surgery on his alien implants. We're glad you're back, Human Carl. We love you, my man. And thank you for joining us. Big Dog, thank you for kicking off the Super Chat tonight. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. So thank you, my friend. And hopefully get to see you in Reno this year. And scrolling on down, who do we got? We got Thomas Rock. We have Mentira. Good to see you. Tewaz, thanks for coming on in. And let's get the radio side going, shall we? Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott, and you are listening to the radio podcast side of tonight's show, which is Wisdom from the Spiritual World. Yes, Carol Oakley is here tonight, and we are going to have some fun with her momentarily as we await Bill WD-40 to come on in and lube us up for tonight's show. All right, continuing on with our roll call. Marty Burback, Buckethead the Soothsayer, good to see you. And where are we here? And Jennifer, thank you for joining us. Scrolling on down, Matt Geek, good to see you. Rono, there's Bill WD-40, currently lubing up as we speak. Do me a favor, everybody, get those horns up. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. And we will have a great show for you tonight. Carole J. Obley is here. She's a psychic intuitive who has a brand new book out that we're going to be talking about called Wisdom from the Spirit World, which can be found at her website, soulvisions.net. And then in hour number 3, we are foregoing Steve Stockton from Among the Missing tonight because we're going to hammer down some UFO information with Nicole Sakic and the legendary Courtney Marcassani for the UFO report, all in hour number 3. All right, let's get right to it. Acclaimed spiritual medium and popular author Carole J. Obley has been the bridge between heaven and earth in more than 14,000 group and individual psychic readings. Names, descriptions of loved ones' personalities, and uncanny validating details, as well as grief support and teaching about the afterlife, are typically delivered in her sessions. An advanced intuitive, Carol also regularly delivers specific, practical guidance in readings about what a wide variety of life issues are, including relationships, business, and spirituality. She is recognized by clients for bringing compassion and integrity to mediumship via her sincere intent to be of service to others. Once again, you can find her books on her website, soulvisions.net. Carole Oakley, welcome to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you here tonight. I mean, this is something you have been dealing with your entire life, psychic intuition. Do you remember going back way back as a child and remember that first experience that you had that really said, is this normal? Is this what happens?
It's ironic because when I was a child, I was very afraid of death. And my first grandparent died. I was about 10 years old. And I remember going to the funeral home. It was my grandpa, my mother's father. And I remember looking at his body in the casket, and I was terrified. The appearance of his skin, his hands, at that point, I didn't know anything about the afterlife, and was raised in a Christian church, and we were taught about heaven, but um, seeing my grandpa there deceased was very frightening for me, and I had nightmares about it for a period of time after that. And the same with my grandmother, when she passed too, way back in 1977. So I really wasn't aware of my innate ability to communicate with non-physical beings until much later in life, and that was during my mid 30s.
Wow. Wow. And what kind of awakening did you have?
Well, I've written very honestly and openly. I'm extremely transparent. I'm extremely genuine. Um, and I had recovery from drugs and alcohol when I was about 25. And
Congratulations.
that opened up the door to finding out who I was beyond my personality, beyond my ego. And I began to read a lot of material on spirituality, and everything, has transformed from there. So I came to the work through, and actually, there was a second sort of catastrophic type of event as well. I came to the work through suffering, basically. Um, and I think a lot of people, get into this field through something that happens to them that really transforms them. And it's not always fun. Um, it was quite painful for me. I spent many years in recovery and getting stabilized and so forth. So that was over 40 years ago. And there's been a tremendous, when I look back on who I was then and now, it's like it was a completely different lifetime. I always say I've lived probably 5 lifetimes inside of one.
Oh my goodness. My goodness. Now, when you started getting more into understanding your own spiritual awakening and the curses and the and everything that comes with it, I mean, were you prepared for the fact that all of a sudden you could have this intuition to not only talk to spirit, but to kind of have premonitions and everything that goes along with it?
Yes, yes. Now, I was born with sensitivity. And how do I know that? Because I've studied astrology for many, many, many years. In fact, I do, along with mediumship readings, I offer these things called Akashic record readings. So, looking at my birth chart and then understanding what the planets were saying, I realized that I came into this life with sensitivity. And I believe I know that I've done this in previous incarnations. So it's a sort of recalling or remembering. Anyone who is worth their salt, who is doing mediumship, in addition to having a natural sensitivity, you also have to take training and to hone that skill. So I've taken many years with different various teachers, other mediums, British mediums, American mediums, um, and also I teach. I teach mediumship development to people. So, but yeah, just like being an athlete or a musician, you can be born with that talent, but you also have to, um, hone it and refine it.
How did you find your own support through this? What was the what was the key element for you in order to do this? I mean, if you were having to find out on your own, was there somebody who you looked to for wisdom and for guidance, almost like a mentor?
No, in fact, if I could have one wish today, it would be that during my years, my teenage years, my 20s and my 30s, that I would have had somebody to talk to. But I didn't. And so I studied a lot. I've read many, many books. I'm also, um, I use the tarot. I know that like the back of my hand. I'm self taught with that. I bought books and I taught myself the cards by using them over and over again. So everything that I've obtained, I've really gotten on my own. Um, Nobody in my family has this ability. In fact, I remember my father saying, "I don't know where you get that, but it's not from our side." So,
Right.
um,
Well,
yeah.
let me stop you there for a second. How did your family react when all of a sudden you started coming out with all of this?
Um, well, I think that they thought that this was another diversion that Carol was taking. Um, something that I was just going to explore and then sit down, set it down. And when my mother, who passed 20 years ago, held my first book in her hands, she said to me, "I didn't know you had that much to say." So, the word psychic and medium was never mentioned in my house growing up. We were very church centered. I was at Sunday school every Sunday. My mother taught Sunday school. My mother sang in the choir. My father was a deacon. So that's the way I grew up. And, psychism and mediumship were not explored, they weren't even mentioned.
Did you ever get in trouble for that from the church? That you were seeing demons and that you were dabbling in dark arts?
No, because at that point, when I was going to the church that, I was confirmed in, baptized in, I wasn't engaged in mediumship. However, I have always, 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 since I was a child, been interested in the paranormal. Um, I read books on UFOs when I was probably about 9 or 10. I studied the Bermuda Triangle. I have always been interested in Bigfoot. Um, you name it, I've been into it. And I've always been interested too on what happens when we die. Even when I was a child, I went to the cemetery with my grandmother, and it was a Catholic cemetery. So there were photographs on the graves. And I remember walking up to, I was probably about 8 or 9, and I walked up to the headstones and I looked at the photos and I said, "I wonder where that soul is now." And some of them were children. So I would think, why would God allow a child to die? And so I was always asking the question, why? And I always wanted to see what was um, underneath the surface of things. And I'm still like that in exploring and turning over every rock, that is there to find the answer.
How quickly did the answers start coming?
Well, it depends what we're talking about. Um, Sometimes quickly, sometimes, I just could not get enough of reading about certain topics. UFOs for one, um, the abduction phenomena. Um, I I don't think those questions are really fully answered today. So, we continue to investigate. And I'm always, always learning more also about astrology as the language of the soul.
Awesome. I absolutely love the fact that you're very philosophic about it, this is something that you have delved deep into with your own study. You didn't have any influence from anybody else but what you were able to know. How many wrong turns did you take before you found the right path?
A lot. And one of them was, again, the exploration of not really liking who I was. And that's why I got into drugs and alcohol when I was young. Because I could be someone else. I could be someone who I wasn't without those. And so that was a major, I, I don't know that I really look at it as a wrong turn at this point, because everything is necessary in our spiritual evolution. And that led me to where I am today. But I got into a lot of trouble when I was younger. I think my parents wanted to tear their hair out. And I put them through hell, basically. And I've made many, many amends since then. But when I look back on that person that I was with the wrong turns, everything was pulling me onto this pathway. Uh, I personally believe that mediums are born, not made. I'm from that school of thought. And for some reason, I went through what I did, but I used it as a springboard for spiritual growth. And that's the really important part. And absolutely, that's one of the lessons I wrote about in Wisdom from the Spirit World. Our wounds do not diminish the light within us. In fact, the wounds strengthen us.
That is a very strong comment to make, because I think for a lot of us, when we are that lost soul, we don't know really where to turn. And you found it within spirituality on your own. I mean, that's an accomplishment in itself, because most of us do not hear those messages.
Yeah, well, again, I wish I would have had somebody back then that I could talk to. We didn't have the internet, there wasn't videos to watch, there was no YouTube. There was mediumship was not on television. Um, so, but there have always been books. And, so it was really an exploration that I had to take to end up where I am today.
Right. And with that exploration and the paths that you went down, was it scary for you? Was it something that, you second guessed yourself on?
1 million times, 1 million times, and probably more than that. And I always say, if I had $1 for every time that I wanted to quit, and I'm speaking about being on the spiritual pathway, but particularly mediumship, until I reached a certain level, um, I expected different things to happen. And when they didn't happen, I thought something was wrong with me. And patience is one of my spiritual lessons this time. So, I was very impatient. I wanted it all now. When things didn't work out, or when particular media didn't work out, I would get very frustrated. I would want to quit. Thank goodness that I stayed on the pathway and, persevered to where I am now.
Okay. How did you persevere? Like, was it spirit that guided you, or was it something else? Was it something else internal inside of you that led you down this path?
Well, spirit is within every person. So I give total credit to spirit. That's my word for God, by the way, with a capital S. In all the books I've written, I call God spirit. And absolutely, I owe that. It is all due to spirit's guidance, protection, and unconditional love. And in each person, that exists, that it is not just for certain people. It is within every living being, including animals. So, what we need to do is to trust that until you have direct experience with it. And I think trust is the number one issue um, in with most people, and particularly when you're learning something like mediumship, because your rational brain or your left brain is always going to say, "You're making this up." Those are your own thoughts. And so then you get to a level where there's a knowing, and it's not an intellectual knowing. It's a heart certainty that what you're perceiving is correct, is valid.
You brought up something really, really important there. As we got about 3 minutes to go before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Psychic medium, intuitive Carole J. Obley is here tonight as our guest. And that is that we question those little voices that we hear. We question their accuracy. How do we know that it's not our imagination, but spirit coming together and bringing us a message that we need to convey?
That's an excellent question, because it will feel different. What I mean by that is, in some of the books I've written, I kind of do a chart where on one side, there's the little thoughts, which are coming from the rational mind or from the ego. And on the other side, there's, the higher guidance that's coming from spirit. So the guidance will feel certain. It will feel bigger than you. And it's sort of that knowing in your gut. People talk about, you've heard that expression, the gut feeling. And that's actually coming from the energy center. They're called chakra. Um, and that's the solar plexus right in the gut area. And we're very sensitive there. And that's where we exchange energy with the outside world. And that's where you can lose energy too, to people who are psychic vampires, so to speak. But it's really a different feeling than when you know it with your mind. It feels expansive. It feels larger than you. Um, it really depends on the nature of the message, um, but it does definitely feel differently than the rational thought.
Hmm. Okay, explain how it feels differently than rational thought. We got about 90 seconds here.
Well, if we're talking about something with a prophecy, or something that is hasn't happened yet, it will be sort of this sense, clairsentience. Everybody's heard of clairvoyance, which is seeing. Clairsentience is feeling. So the intuition comes through clairsentience, which is feeling. And so it's very different than knowing, on an intellectual level. That's how best I would describe it. It's an inner sensing.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I like to call it that little voice that we
That
hear.
too. Yes.
You know, I'll tell you, I actually had to learn the hard way one day. I had my ATV out. I was going riding with people who I'd ridden with before, but I had that little voice telling me the whole time going up to the mountain, don't ride today. It's a bad day to ride. Don't ride today. I didn't listen. And 15 minutes into the ride, I almost killed myself. And I
Mm.
had my ATV roll over top of me and roll down a mountain embankment 250 feet, destroying my ATV. That was good enough for me. Carole J. Obley, you hold on right there. We are going to take a break here at the bottom of the hour here on Spaced Out Radio. Author Carole J. Obley is our guest tonight. We're going to get into wisdom from the spirit world. How do we communicate? How do we do these life teachings through the spirit? We will be right back on Spaced Out Radio right after this. All right, we are clear. Yeah. Having fun yet?
Yes.
You are so knowledgeable.
Oh, thank you. I don't think of myself as that. I'm very I have a lot of integrity within the field. I think that's really important.
Oh, yes. Very much so. Very much you have to be aware of that.
Yes. It's called ethics.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I totally agree with you on that. And, that's something that there's not a lot of in the paranormal, supernatural, ufological world. People seem to have forgotten that. I don't know why. But
Yeah, well, I see it in my field a lot too. So,
yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand why, but it is what it is. And unfortunately, we got to put up with it. That's for sure. We have to put up with it. But just keep bringing our best. Hi, sweet Robbie G and David Hayworth. Nice to see you both here. And IXOXI, how are we? Yes, Jules, you're right. They should not have stopped teaching ethics in schools. I tell you. They should be teaching more life stuff in schools. Like how to balance a checkbook, how to have good credit, how to buy a house, how to get a loan for a car, rather than worrying about stuff that happened 1,700 years ago in history. Not that it isn't important. History is important. Thanks, Tim, for putting that up. Brandon Coast, how are you?
Oh, you know what, Dave? That is not the correct address for me.
Here, it's soulvisions.net.
Thank you.
I got it here. I'll put it up. Here's the correct one. There we go. There we go. You do a lot of energy work too?
I do. In fact, I started that way. I took a lot of years of training in spiritual healing, and I'm a Reiki master. I still use Reiki. Still use Reiki. It was probably the best thing I ever did was to get a Reiki attunement. Actually, 3 of them. So,
Yeah, my partner, she took a Reiki course a number of years ago. And I thought, what is with this crap? I don't buy this. And one day my back was just killing me. And she's like, let me just try it on you. I said, fine. Like very angrily, I said, fine. And she put her hands up. She's like, do you feel anything? I'm like, no, just the pain in my back. And she goes, okay. And all of a sudden I started screaming. I'm like, get your hands off my back. You're killing me here. And she goes, I'm nowhere near your back. And I swiveled in my chair, turned around, and she was probably 2.5, 3 feet behind me.
okay.
And I was like, holy cow.
You had someone else working on you. You had a non-physical person that was
Well, I later found out that a former friend of mine who was a witch cursed me.
Oh my heavens.
And I had to get the curse removed. Yeah. She was somebody who loved the spotlight. This is way before Spaced Out Radio. She loved the spotlight, and the problem was everything was happening. All the experiences were happening to me in our little group, whether it was the UFOs, the aliens, the Bigfoot, everything was happening to me, and she hated that. So she cursed me on it. And I had to get the curse lifted. Give me just a couple of seconds here. Big Dog, Louie, Rob, and Thomas, thank you for the super chats. Here we go, everybody. And welcome back to the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We're getting into psychic intuitiveness. Try saying that fast 5 times. Intuitiveness with author, researcher, psychic Carole J. Oakley. We're going to get to her momentarily. But first, want to remind each and every one of you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/spaced out radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. And once again, our guest tonight, Carole J. Oakley. She is a psychic medium and intuitive. She's given over 14,000 readings in her lifetime. Just an amazing, amazing woman who is pushing the limits of bringing true readings and intuition to those who seek her for help. She's got a book out that we love to talk about, Wisdom from the Spirit World. Soulvisions.net is her website. Carole, welcome back.
Thank you.
I love the title of your book, In Wisdom from the Spirit World, Teachings on Love, Forgiveness, Purpose, and Finding Peace. It's a pretty heavy book to write for so many different topics.
Well, that's really what the work is about. I mean, the subtitle. In fact, one of the lessons that everything I write about is direct experience that I've had. And one of the lessons, one of the themes that over and over and over again kept coming through was releasing the past frees us. So in a way, we could say that that's forgiveness, because in a spiritual sense, forgiveness is about making a conscious decision to not carry the past. And I think sometimes people can get misconstrued in that they think that it means that they're, putting a stamp of approval on how someone hurt them or traumatized them or abused them, and it's not that. It means my past does not limit or define me. It's an experience that I had. Just as we were talking in the first part about my past and, falling into alcohol and drugs and getting into a lot of trouble that way. It's really put me in a position, for example, that I can now use it to help other people, because I've done many, many readings for people who have alcoholism in the family. It's a family pattern. It's come down the generations. People who have lost children to opioid overdoses. I've done many of those readings. And I never used opioids, in my own life. But I understand addiction because I walked down that pathway. So we can use something that most people would think would be traumatic or terrible. Once we recover from it, we can use it to help others. And that also applies to, I've done many readings for people who have lost children. They're never the same again. They're devastated. But those who use it to grow and to reach out and help other parents who maybe just lost a child, yesterday, and This other person lost a child, 5 years ago. They've walked down that pathway. And so they understand the emotions, they understand the devastation. And so something very painful can be used to grow. And that's one of the lessons that I talk about in the book is, that and our wounds do not diminish the light of who we are. They're simply, if we can reframe them as experiences that we've had, the soul is always wanting to experience things. That's why we come here. Here meaning on the 3D realm, onto Earth. So wisdom from the spirit world is really themes that I heard reading after reading after reading, and I consolidated them into those 8 lessons that are in the book.
With the fact that you had to break these different topics down into 8 different lessons, when I look at my own spirituality and my own sense of belief and intuition, I often wonder a lot of times why this is happening to me. Why do I have this ability? How do I enhance it? How do I shut portions off? There's a million questions in between this entire phenomena of intuition. Have we even, or pardon me, let me rephrase, is this tapping into a different portion of the brain that we don't yet understand? Or is this more than just the brain or a soul connection?
Well, I mentioned earlier about the left brain being the logical, part hemisphere, to balance a checkbook. Language is actually a function of the left brain. The right brain is much more highly creative. And so I'm not sure scientists really understand, although mediums have been tested. Dr. Gary Schwartz has done a lot of testing of various mediums. I personally have not been tested scientifically, but I've certainly had to pass tests in order to, during my trainings with complete strangers, giving them readings and with the accuracy. But I believe that we have receptors. I don't know what you would call them, but there is the ability. To me, the brain is simply a step down unit for higher consciousness. It's not the be all and end all. It's simply sort of a transducer for higher consciousness. And if you want to plug into that, that's where intuition comes in. That's how you can develop it. Although I do feel that every single person, animals too, have intuition for survival. Back in the days when people were hunters and gatherers and there was danger lurking around every corner or a wild animal or, some natural catastrophe that was happening, intuition was what saved people. And I think we've all had that experience too, where we don't pay attention to intuition, like you were saying when you were riding your vehicle, your ATV or whatever. And yeah, so I mean, anybody can tap into intuition. Does that mean you're going to go out and be a professional psychic, professional medium? I don't believe so. But certainly everybody has the ability to tune in to that part of the brain that is the conduit for higher source information.
Where does that information come from?
Higher consciousness, meaning higher than the rational mind, which again is what I call spirit. We have this thing called a soul. We have this thing called a body. The body is perishable, as we all know. The body breaks down, the body gets sick. The soul does not. The soul is eternal. And it's not a belief with me. Sometimes in interviews I've said, I don't believe in life after death. And then I say, I know it. I know that that we go on after we leave here. I've had so many firsthand experiences with that reality that I can say 100% that I've directly experienced it and that I know it. So, I personally don't understand how anyone could really be an atheist, to think that this is all there is. Um, it's never made sense to me. And now with mediumship and, connecting with thousands and thousands of people, both in the living and in the spirit world, I know that we have more than meets the eye.
How often are you contacted by spirit?
Not quite sure what you mean by the question. Do you mean with my own spiritual guidance?
With your own spiritual guidance, are you bombarded by spirits and connections on the other side?
No. No, I love that mediumship has been on television, but there's some shows that have really given people false reality shows of mediums that have given people false ideas. First off, you should not walk up to strangers in a bagel shop and say, oh, I see, your husband around you or your grandmother or whoever. That's really infringing on that person's privacy. Um, and people have asked me, one of the most common questions I'm asked is, do you go to the grocery store and see spirits? No, because it's a switch that I can turn on. When I sit with somebody, either through Zoom, I do a lot of Zoom readings. I also do the phone. In fact, all my private readings are done in those two ways, virtually or on the phone. That's when it flows. And it's like flipping a light switch on. Um, However, there have been times in which I will receive information prior to a reading. I do a lot of group mediumship. It's called platform mediumship, demonstrations. And I have obtained astonishing information about people that I have no idea who's going to be at that group. And I will sit with a piece of paper sometimes and sit there and write things of what, the spirit communicator is telling me. And then when I take the paper to the group, and lo and behold, there's somebody there. A good example of that, there was a spirit who came to me. I was doing a benefit for an animal organization, and I donated everything to them, which I'm doing again. I'm very passionate about animals. And a gentleman came who had been a firefighter during 911. And he gave me the number of his station in New York City. And so I had no idea who was going to be at this group. I went to the group and I took my paper out of my purse and I said that information. And there was a woman there and she said, that's my cousin. And that was the number of his station. And it was 3 digits. So, and I've had many examples like that where I don't know who's going to be at a group. And then there would be a spirit communicator who comes and will give me very distinct information, a name, how they passed, other validating information. And it startles me even, because I really don't know how it works other than there's a blending. That's what has to happen in mediumship. The spirit person's soul blends with my soul. And I become aware of their life, their thoughts, memories, their personality, what they passed from. So that's really how it works, as to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. So the fact that you can communicate with spirit, with former people on this planet that have walked around for centuries, animals, and everything that is kind of living here, since everything is living from trees to grass to flowers and everything, how do you make sure that you don't get overwhelmed with the messages that are out there?
I know my limits. I know my limits. It's absolutely essential when you're doing this work to take care of yourself. And that means proper nutrition. It means saying no. It means getting the correct amount of rest. It means not doing, you know, 5 or 10 readings a day when you should only be doing 3.
Yes.
So I know my limits, and I would far rather give quality than quantity.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so let me ask you this, because there's a lot of people out there who claim to be intuitive, claim to have psychic vision. How do you tell a good psychic medium from one who is not?
Well, first off, referencing people, I could probably take out a billboard on, a major interstate advertising myself, and it wouldn't do for me what word of mouth has done. Um, and so referencing is a good place to start. In fact, in one of my books, I have a section on how to find a reputable medium. And so that people can understand that. How do you go on, the internet? Do you go, how do you find that person? So I've written some books, and yes, people find me through that. But most people will find me through referencing someone who has had a good experience. As far as the mechanics of mediumship, I would say that there must be evidence given about the spirit communicator's life, about their identity, things that I personally would never know about that person, their life, what their quirks. Just about anything can come through in the reading as what is called evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So that absolutely should be in a good reading. And the other component of it, actually, there are 2 other components. Another one is compassion for people. People come, they're hurting, they're in grief, they might be confused, they might be devastated. Of course, I always believe that people need to walk down the pathway of grieving before they um, connect with me for a reading, because this is not a cure-all. I'm very honest about the work. It's a tool in the toolbox of healing. It's
Mm-hmm.
one tool. Psychotherapy is another pathway. Um, going out in nature, taking care of yourself. There are many things that you can do to heal. This is just one of them. And it's not for everybody. Certainly, I don't, push mediumship on anybody. People who need me will find me. And that's just the attitude that I take about the work. I used to worry about that. I don't worry about it anymore, because I know that spirit will provide and bring onto the pathway, who can benefit from what I have. I don't want the people who aren't going to benefit, because it's not true service. It's not serving them, and it can drain me.
I could see that as we have about 4.5 minutes to go before we have to go to break at the top of the hour. Psychic intuitive author Carol Oakley is with us tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Okay, you said a lot of profound things there, about how to find a good quality medium. Do your research. Don't just pick up the first person who has a Google ad or lots of subscribers on Facebook or whatever it may be. I mean, there is somebody, I mean, just because they may be good for one, it may not be good for you. It really is trying to have a connection with the person who you are entrusting with your life and your life secrets, is it not?
Oh yes, it's a very, when I'm doing a reading for someone, that's a very intimate space.
Mm-hmm.
And there are certain people over the years, 'cause I've read for people from all walks of life and also from many other countries than the US. I even worked with an interpreter at one point, because the lady was from the Middle East and did not understand English. So she had to have, an interpreter, which happened to be her son. He spoke perfect English. Um, so yes, it is an intimate space. Sometimes people clam up and they feel too vulnerable. And then the energy really can't flow because what I'm doing is reading energy. And that's why it works on the phone and that's why it works over the internet because it's nothing to do with seeing somebody. In fact, I prefer not to see people when I read for them. I don't have any body language, to color anything. So it's very pure on the phone.
Mm-hmm. I could see that. Well, who will you not work with? Children?
Well, yeah, people under 18, I always make sure that and there have been young people and they're very advanced spiritually. You can tell they're an old soul. They've been around. Um, they used to be called, the one generation was the Indigo Children. Then they
Yes.
were the Crystal Children. And there's a lot of souls who have been incarnating, I would say, ever since Edgar Casey was doing his readings, like back in the 1920s, 1930s, of Atlantean souls, souls who have not been on the planet for a long, long time. And the reason they're coming back now is because of the technology explosion. And I've personally connected with some of them. Some of them were young people, in their late teens, 20s, and I have a certain symbol that will appear to me clairvoyantly when I encounter a soul like that, which isn't very often, but it's a yellow triangle, and that's what it means to me. In fact, mediumship works with a lot of anyone who has done a number of readings will tell you they have certain symbols that they work with that mean certain things. And it's the same way with me. And I generally won't work with anyone who is highly, highly skeptical, who isn't even on the fence, but is just like, well, prove it to me, sort of individual, because it's a waste of my time and it's a waste of theirs.
Yes.
Um,
I can see that. I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break here in about 20 seconds here. And, I don't want to get started on a new question when we're just going to run out of time. Carol, this has been an amazing first hour here on Spaced Out Radio. So glad to have you on as a guest for us tonight. And you know what? When we come back from the break, I want to hear some of Carol's stories. Which are the stories that have been sticking out to her over the years that, we all have them. The ones we just can't forget. We're going to hit her up on that. Carole J. Obley is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Her website, soulvisions.net, and her book, Wisdom from the Spirit World, Teachings on Love, Forgiveness, Purpose, and Finding Peace. We can do it, people. We'll do it together on Spaced Out Radio Hour 2 next. All right, we are clear. Big hello to gorgeous Kim Jellin, who brushes and flosses twice a day. We're into that second brushing and flossing as we speak. Asimov, nice to see you. And who else has jumped in here? That's about it for right now. Carol, I'm going to take a quick break here. Hi, Shiny Ray. I'm going to take a quick break here. I'm just going to put you back in the green room for now, and I'll be right back, okay?
Okay.
All right. We'll be right back. We got about 5 minutes, Carol. Hi, Carol Burke. How are you? All right. I am back. We got just over a minute left. Let's bring Carol back in here. Right. Dave's back, Kira. Dave's back. Reminder to all of you that May 10th through 12th in Reno, Nevada at the Silver Legacy Casino Resort, we have the 3rd annual SOR fan party going on, and we want to see all of you there. You can get your tickets at info@spacedoutradio.com, info@spacedoutradio.com, and make sure that you book your tickets very, very soon. I need to know by April 10th, so that way I can get our swag bags ready, and I know how many T-shirts and everything to order. So it's all up to you. We're going to have some fun there. So make sure you head on over today. Hi, Gary Rusin. Knight Rider, good to see you. Lovely Lavira, nice to have you back. Hi, Todd Turner. How you doing? And who else is here? Let's come on in. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, and here we go. Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. Always appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hi to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Wanchancy. Wanchancy is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Read the Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. We continue on tonight with our guest, Carole J. Obley, author, spiritual guide, psychic intuitive. She has a book out called Wisdom from the Spirit World, teachings on love, forgiveness, love, forgiveness, purpose, and finding peace. Sometimes I can't read the small writing that I write. Oh, my goodness. Carol, thank you for being here. Very much appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. Great conversation.
Oh, I think we're having a great conversation tonight. I love these talks. I really do love these talks. And, you know, one of the things about being intuitive that I have noticed is how it seems to heighten all of your senses, your hearing, your sight, your smell, everything that just seems to go along with it. Why does this happen?
I don't know. I haven't noticed that. Unfortunately, I had an excellent sense of smell and taste. I lost that over a year ago when I had COVID. It could just be because, we feel more alive because we're getting that, higher sense perception that's coming through. Personally, I haven't noticed it, but I do get a lot of ringing in my ears, which I perceive, there's nothing wrong with my ears, but I perceive that as energy. And I've been getting that for years and years. And it all started when I was first attuned to Reiki, hands-on healing modality. That's when it really started. And sometimes when I'm doing readings, it becomes really intense. And then other times it's just when I'm sitting there, not doing anything. And sometimes I have to say, whoever's doing that, back off. It's too annoying.
Yeah. I often will say, hey, can you turn that down, please?
Yeah.
I'm trying to concentrate here. Can you turn it down? And it's amazing how quickly the spirit will turn it down. I want to ask you, in regards to your own personal experiences through your readings and connections. We all have stories that have really stuck out and profoundly, hit us emotionally to help define us. What's a couple stories you could share with us that really help define who you are throughout your career?
Oh boy. I have been so blessed to meet so many people, so many people. Um, and I think I would answer that in this way. I was doing a group not long ago, and a woman came up to me afterwards, and I turned around and she was standing there. I didn't even see her in the group. It was a smaller group. There was only maybe 30 people. I didn't even see her in during the session. And she said to me, "Can I give you a hug?" And I said, um, "Okay." And she said, "You don't know me, but you have helped me immeasurably because of the death of my son." And apparently, I'd done phone readings for her. I didn't recognize her. But there's been so many examples like that. You cannot, I can't even put that into words how that feels, because it's such a sense of gratitude, to be blessed. I feel to be doing this work, and to be a small part of people's healing journey. As I said, there are many healing tools when we lose somebody that we love. And that includes pets too. I mean, there people grieve very strongly. I know I do when I've lost my pets. So that would probably define why I do the work. What happened in that interchange that was less than, like a minute with this woman who I did not know, and thanked me for helping her. um that's really what the work is about.
Hmm. Have you ever had a situation where you were, you know, profoundly emotionally affected by an event that occurred or a reading that occurred that really hit someone that you didn't expect?
The answer to that is yes, because I'm a human being. Although I remain detached, for most in most instances. I have to, because if I didn't, I would be down in the energy, the very low vibration. If we have a vibrational scale, because we're talking about energy, grief, depression, and sadness, and whatever, there are not so nice emotions are at the lower end of that scale. I don't want to be pulled down there. Um, so I have to, my shielding from that is a detachment. But when your heart is in something, you can't help but be touched by it. And I actually had one of those the other day with a woman who, um, I believe she had a beloved dog that came through in the reading. There are many readings I've done, pets appear, and I'll give a description, and, maybe they had a physical ailment, his back leg bothered him. He had arthritis in his hips. He had tumors or whatever it might have been. Um, but it really touched me that, this woman's pet, she was grieving over this pet, appeared, and one of her loved ones brought this pet through, this dog through. So am I affected? Very much. The work has changed me to the point where I will never be the same. And I mean that in a very good sense, because it has opened me to totally eliminate any fear of death whatsoever. It has made me a much more compassionate individual. And it's opened up my heart to the point where I truly do care. And I want that on my tombstone when I die. All I want on there is just my name and then she cared. Because um, I feel that's probably the greatest thing that we can do is to really care about others and, you know, to help them in some way. And the healing's never coming from me. It's never coming from me. It's coming through me. But it's changed me when it comes through me. It has changed me to the point where I am a vastly different individual than when I entered this world.
I can see where that would be highly emotional and highly affecting what you do as not only a psychic medium but as a person, because I love what you said about the fact that you are a person and you do have those emotions that go along with, the clients that you have. You feel what they are going through, the pain, the agony, the disrepair, everything. I mean, how do you block your own emotions from taking on a client's emotions?
I don't work too hard at it. I've been blessed since the beginning to have an ability to do that, and I know why because of my own study of my own natal chart and astrology. But without going into all of that, I believe I have the temperament to do the work, um, and so I can read or pass along the observations to that individual without getting bogged down with it. And as I said, it's very important to take care of oneself when you're doing this work. A good way to get sick is to exceed your limit, to take on other people's emotions. That can make one sick. I'm not kidding about that. I mean, I've seen it happen with various mediums. And you're not doing anyone any favors when you play a martyr or, when you exceed your own limit. And you have to learn how to say, no, I can't do that, or, whatever. I don't say that too often. And people are generally really understanding. But yeah, it's really important that you have to do your own inner work. When you're doing this work, you will not be able to do the work effectively if you aren't constantly knowing yourself and getting rid of your own issues. This is not about like, well, I'm perfect and so I'm going to tell you this or that. No. I'm the first one to admit I deal with different emotions all the time. I've made many mistakes. To wait for the perfect person to step up to the plate and be a medium, you're not going to find that. But you do the best you can. And that involves constantly doing your own inner work. And you can't detach from doing your own inner work. I mean, spirit will knock you down. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen. Um, so it is really important to know yourself and understand your own emotions, because there's a resonance that happens. If a spirit person comes through and they're depressed, or they had a hard time with a circumstance in life, that will resonate with when I've maybe felt down or when I've had a difficult circumstance. So it's always like looking in a mirror.
Do you use any tools to help you connect with the other side?
No, no, I was not trained that way. If you mean like a photograph or an object. No, and I'm glad I don't, because now that I'm virtual and on the phone, I couldn't have that anyway unless somebody sends me a photo. But I much prefer to do to have a very clean slate when I read, and that's important. The less that I know consciously, in fact, I stop people from telling me things. I put right on my website, do not, I run my whole business myself, Dave. So, I make my own appointments. I do everything on my own. And that way I can keep my fees much lower than other people nationally who are doing the same type of work with my experience. So I have right on my website, please do not give me information when you make the appointment.
I think that's legit. I think that's amazingly legit. And the reason why I ask is a lot of people use tea leaves or tarot cards or dowsing rods or anything that can kind
Hmm.
of help get in tune. You don't need that.
Well, those are legitimate, but I think if you become dependent on something at the start, like, well, oh, I can't do this without my cards, or I can't do this without, whatever, a prop, or, then you're kind of left high and dry. If you don't have that available, um, I've done many years of radio and radio readings, and it's on the spot. You got to do it right then, and you get like one sentence from a caller, and you have to be able to tune in. So I'm really grateful I didn't learn that way. Um, I did mention earlier that I do use the tarot, and I actually teach the tarot, the spiritual journey
Mm.
of the tarot, because the tarot is really spiritually based, contrary to what people, might have, some people might think that it's evil or something. It's not. It's actually depicts the journey of the soul from birth to death. So it's the major arcana is all about the archetypes that are in human consciousness, and I will use those sometimes for life guidance, if it's a life guidance, because usually people want to know when. That's the most common question. When is that going to happen? Or,
Yes.
that
Well,
is the main question.
you bring up a good point there, though, because I have had readings from a number of people over the years, and the one thing that I have noticed with the majority of psychics, I'm not including you in this, because I hate it when people lump everything together as one. Drives me nuts. But the one thing that I've always noticed about a lot of psychic mediums out there is they are highly accurate at predicting the bad things that are going to come. But when they're trying to predict the good things, it's always 6, 8, 10, 12 months away. But don't worry, you're going to get there. But when you get there, there's a Mercury retrograde, that is shooting down swords at you, that is blocking anything good. But don't worry, in another 6, 8, 10, 12 months, I promise you it's going to happen. And then you wait again, and of course, nothing happens.
You have me laughing on that one. I can identify with it. That's why. Not that I don't do that. I do not do that. In fact, I do not give death predict. That's highly unethical to give death predictions. The only time I have done that is when the spirit world is right there, and they're going, we're here waiting for that soul to cross over. And the recipient of the reading usually knows that anyway. Like it's an elderly person, or the person has severe cancer or heart disease or something. So I do not give negative information. Why? Because it's not serving that person, except it creates anxiety and fear. That's not helping that individual. Um, and the spirit world wouldn't permit it anyway. with me. I know they wouldn't. So it's about the sacredness of the recipient's soul, not just the souls in spirit, but the sacredness and the eternity and the magnitude of that recipient's soul. And to really know that you are an eternal soul, and also that you do have unlimited potential. You're the captain of the ship. I mean, I deal with, positive empowerment with people. It's not about the negative. I think most of us already know what's wrong with us. We need to be told what's going that's positive.
True. True. But, a lot of people, I think the way it goes with a lot of people out there, a lot of psychics out there, is that if it's, fear brings money. It's much like the government. If you're helping somebody, you're not going to make as much money. And I think that's the attitude. Once again, not you, because I think you're highly professional that way and actually have some dignity, But I do believe that there's a lot of shysters out there in this world who take advantage of people who are at their lowest of the low.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. I work in this field and I've been in it for 30 years, and I will tell you that that is true. Yes. And so you won't last long, though. You will not last long because, again, as I stressed earlier, word of mouth is how most people find a reputable medium. Yeah, you might come across somebody on Facebook or, YouTube or whatever, but by and large, most people are referenced unless the person's on national television and has their own show, and then they have waiting lists that are like 5 years long. I don't know how anyone manages that. I have no clue how you manage a waiting list, of 5 year, even 2 years. But you will not last long in this field because people know if you're genuine. I mean, they really will. They use their intuition and they can feel if you're genuine.
Hmm. I like that. I like that. And you seem extremely genuine in what you want to do. I mean, yes, this is your job, but I can tell you're actually there to help people. You're not there to, you know, give them roses, then take it away in 6, 8, 10, 12 months. You know, I think that's commendable. I really do.
Thank you. Yeah, I I've seen many things over the years with other people who are working mediums and psychics, and some of it I think is highly unethical. But I don't mean to demean the field at all because it is a real, legitimate field. It's gained in respectability. I've made that part of my sort of, it just comes naturally to me as far as, you know, I am who I say I am. I mean, I'm doing what I have studied and what I've been put here to do. If you're meant to be on this pathway of being a medium, you're not going to be on it by taking a couple of weekend workshops. It takes years, and I mean years, to be
Right.
able to reach a level where you can sit with a grieving person and say, you know, here's what your husband's telling me, here's what your wife's telling me.
Right. Carol, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. We have one final half hour left with author and psychic medium Carole J. Obley on Spaced Out Radio. Her website, oh, I love this one. It's real cool. Soulvisions.net. We'll be right back on the Mighty SOR. We are clear. There we go. Going by fast.
Mhm.
It's good stuff. That's
You're
good stuff.
you're an excellent interviewer.
Oh, thank you.
I mean
Thank
that. Yeah, you really are.
It's the power of the hair.
You know, I just got to say this. I hope I don't upset you, but you remind me of Glenn Beck. Has anyone ever said that to you?
Well, Glenn Beck grew up in Bellingham, Washington, and I grew up right across the border in Abbotsford, British Columbia, so about half an hour away from each other.
Wow. Wow. No kidding.
Yes. Never met him, never talked to him,
Mm.
you know, but I will take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Oh, your voice even reminds me of his. Yeah.
It's that Pacific Northwest thing.
Well, you really don't have an accent. You probably notice my Pittsburgh accent, but I don't notice an accent with you at all.
Mm-hmm. I did ride the ducky boats in Pittsburgh. I did. Not gonna lie.
Are
I
you
had fun.
talking about that giant duck?
No, these old military
Oh,
vehicles.
okay.
I did that tour, and I have eaten
I haven't done that, and I've lived here all my life.
I have eaten a Primanti sandwich.
Oh yeah,
And
they're about like 5,000 calories, I think.
yeah, I did it though. Totally did it. And I got my name on the wall at the Quaker Steak and Lube for the hot wings challenge.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So that's kind of cool. I love Pittsburgh. It's a beautiful city. Beautiful city.
Yeah, there's been some in some of the little suburbs. Well, they're really not suburbs, but sections of the city. They've really refurbished some of them. Um, you know, I mean, it's an old steel town, and everything was dirty, and you know, the buildings were. If you look at pictures from the 1920s and 30s and even the 40s, everything was black. Everything was dirty. But yeah, it's cleaned up a lot.
I love all the. Here's a couple of things. Before I ever went to Pittsburgh, I'd never seen fireflies before.
Really?
Never, because we don't have them out here. And
Wow.
I remember standing on my buddy's patio having a beer, and I was seeing all these green flashes of light. I'm like, "What is that?" He's like, "What?" He turns, it's off. What's what? This went on for about 15 minutes, and finally, uh, I showed him one, and he's like, "You mean the lightning bugs?" I'm like, "Yeah, is that what they are?" And I'll tell you, I was 34 years old at that time, and I could tell you, I was running around his backyard like a 6-year-old kid trying to catch these things.
Yeah, they love the heat. They usually come out on really hot nights in the summer.
Mhm. That was also the first place I ever saw real Blue Jays,
Mm.
real Cardinals. I'd never seen a Cardinal before. I'd never seen an Oriole before. And
Mm.
so that was kind of cool for me, seeing all of that, because you have to enjoy the little things in life. I thought they were just baseball team logos. The male Cardinals are gorgeous.
Yeah,
Gorgeous.
yes. Yeah, I get them here in my yard all the time. I get
Mhm.
the cardinal pair, you know, the male and the female. Oh, they do mate for life. And they are beautiful. They chirp. They chirp a lot.
Yes. And we were there during one of the cicada hatchings. So at night it was
Um,
just going crazy. That was amazing.
no.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
I
I don't like them. I
I
don't
got to get you to hold on right there, Carol. Thank you, Big Dog, Louie, Rob, Thomas, and uh, Blue Cruise for the great super chats. Louis times two, by the way. And here we go with the next half hour, everyone. And welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight as we kick off the second half of the show. Very much appreciate you tuning us on in. My name is Dave Scott, and I want to remind all of you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Final time tonight, we have a good friend of this show, her website, soulvisions.net. Carol Oakley is an author, researcher, psychic intuitive, a great book on her website you can pick up, Wisdom from the Spirit World, teachings on love, forgiveness, purpose, and finding peace. Carol, thank you so much for being here tonight. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Excellent questions.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're way too kind. Way too kind. I'll pay you later. And
Okay.
why do spirits want us to find love, forgiveness, purpose, and finding peace?
Because that's the nature of the soul. And you have to understand, when we leave this physical plane and we drop this body and we go back home, we become pure spirit again, and the ego kind of dissolves. You know, we all have an ego, we all have a personality. That's what makes us our unique self. Those really don't exist in the spirit world. They do during mediumship, because that's a form of identification that the spirit person will use. But the lasting qualities are what you just said. You know, that bond of love. In fact, that's one of the lessons in wisdom from the spirit world. The bond of love is eternal. That's one of the lessons. Releasing the past frees us. Our personal choices determine the quality of our lives. You know, we all have the ability to make choice, and those choices determine what our life is going to be like. So spirit, that wisdom that comes from those souls, is to help those of us who are here. Yes, the recipients, the family of the people in spirit, but also they will often deliver universal wisdom, universal spiritual wisdom. Usually comes through, I wouldn't say in every reading, but in a good many readings. That sort of information is delivered.
Okay, so what type of messages does spirit want us to listen to? Are they personal? Are they general about cleaning up our life?
Yes, it's, you know, a long time ago, I call them my spirit team. And other people, you know, might call them spirit guides, but those souls who help me with my life lessons here, they said to me, and I heard this in my head, keep your slate clean. And I said, what do you mean? I mean, this conversation was going on in my head. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, if someone does something to you, if you retaliate, you're creating that karma, and that goes on your slate, not theirs. You know, karma, or which is a universal law, a natural law. It's always operating. Karma or natural law will take care of them. You don't have to do that. And so that's always stuck with me. The other thing that they told me, because I've always been this person that I have to know the answer. When I talked about reading all these books and, always asking why. It drove my parents crazy. Why is it like that? What happens then? Or, what about this circumstance? And my guide said to me, rest in the unknowing. And that made me really angry because I said, why? I want to know why. Why should I not know? And they didn't answer me, but I now understand what they meant by that I don't have to know everything. I can now allow spirit to unfold my life according to, my intent. And intent is very important for everybody because you are the one who drives your life. We're not victims. Victimhood is a very dangerous place to be because it disempowers people. So it took me a long time. I was very stubborn. And I constantly have had to gauge my own personality, my mind, my belief system, in doing this work. And so this work is not something that you can go, well, I've mastered it all and I'm going to just, rest on the laurels or whatever. You can't do that with this work because there's always growth. There's always evolution. And that's not just with mediumship. It's with all of us. I mean, whatever you're doing doesn't just have to be in a spiritual field. We're always evolving. We're always growing.
Can it happen to all of us? Can we all do it?
You mean evolve?
Evolve, get in touch with our intuitive side, talk to our spirit guides?
I believe so, yes. Now, are there people who are more sensitive? Yes. That are meant to, if you're called to the field that I'm in, you'll know it. You will know it. And just like with me, I had some very dramatic or painful things that happened. Another one was a fire, and that hit me out of the blue. It took me squarely off the path I was on. I was running my own business, totally different than what I'm doing now. And, it set me down on this other pathway. So again, using something very devastating to start to evolve and to grow through. So no matter what has happened in your life, if you can extract the pearl from that, extract the gold from it, that's the wisdom. That's what you need to use.
How do we know that we're not playing with fire here? And I mean that as, we don't know who we're connecting to on the other side. Spirits can be tricky. They can be tricksters. They could be a little bit of everything. How do we know that we're actually talking to whom they say they are?
By the evidence given, I would say, but also in all the years I've been doing mediumship, I have never been bothered by an evil presence. I have never been bothered by, someone who is malicious. And you know why? Because of the natural law of attraction, which means like energy attracts like energy. I'm not like that. I don't have those qualities. So that's why I don't attract it. And I don't have fear about that. And
Okay.
I'm always connecting with angels too. I mean, as far as, Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, Gabrielle. So angelic presence, and I've actually seen angels. They're not beings. They appear to me as light, different frequencies of light, because they are pure energy. They have not been here ever. They're not subject to karma. Um, so they can take physical form, but they don't have to. Usually, when they take physical form, it's to help somebody in an emergency. But that's how I personally gauge, and I try to keep my slate clean. It's kind of difficult right now, in the modern times, for one to, and I'll be the first to admit that I really have to detach sometimes from what's going on. Um, but it can be done.
I want to go back to something you said in the first half hour in regards to, children being light beings or energy beings or anything like that. I notice it within my own children that they are very much more spiritually adept than I ever was at their age, and what is it with these younger generations that really seem to be more open to spirituality and finding their spiritual path?
Well, I think some of them are advanced. I mean, when I say that, I'm not saying it in a superior way, that they're superior. I'm saying it in a spiritual consciousness
Hmm.
way. Um, and so animals and children are very pure. They radiate with until about the age of 7. Children are, before they go into school. Um, they play, they're highly imaginative, they're creative. And then I think we get, sort of indoctrinated by society, or, with too much knowing or knowledge. To me, animals are superior to us because they don't have an ego. They really radiate the purity of God. And so do children until that certain age. So, in that way, yes, we can learn a lot from being with them. In fact, that's one of the things. I have a new book that'll be coming out later this year. Um, Connecting with children and animals is one of the things that I wrote about that. Can that links us to our own soul.
Okay, so do you believe then that children today, not all of them, but I would say a grand many of them, are keeping in touch with their own spirit guides? Where, back when I was a kid, if you had an imaginary friend, you were told to, you know, stop it. They're not real. They're not anything. Now you look at it and you're like, well, are they talking to a spirit guide? Are they talking to a family loved one? Are they communicating on a different level? Is that spirit guide real, or spirit real, or is it something within their subconscious or imagination? And I just find, like, even watching my own kids, that they are way more connected than anything. And I think that goes along for a lot of parents these days who seem to be a lot more open to the ideas as well.
Yeah, in fact, I've had experiences like that with readings, that the person in spirit will come around that child, and the child may not have even known them, and they'll describe, the spirit person. Um, Sometimes they'll come in and watch over infants, you know. Sometimes, and I've had people over the years send me photographs with orbs in them. And it seems to be, some of these are, they're attracted to children. Um, I'm assuming they're probably loved ones, that are appearing in that way. But it's because of the purity. And some of these souls who are in a young body, they're actually very old souls. So that's why they're knowledgeable and they're very psychic or very intuitive. They're very creative. Some of them are artistic because they've been around the block, so to speak. They've been here many times.
What if a soul reincarnates too quickly?
Well,
Have you ever ran into that with any of your clients?
I honestly, I don't know, because it could be the case that if that would be the case in perhaps something like a miscarriage, you know, uh, the- when the child is still developing, and so that might be why that the timing was off. There are various reasons that I have been shown why um, infants and children die. And that could be, yes, one of the reasons that the timing is not right. Initially, it was thought that it was right for that soul's evolution, but it ends up that perhaps the circumstances weren't. So, yeah, I believe that that does happen.
Do you think the spirit recognizes that they came back too soon? Because that would really suck. I mean, say you're a healthy 25-year-old guy, and you get killed in a car accident. The next thing you know, you got to restart all over again with crappy diapers and being bottle fed and all that kind of stuff. I would be pissed off. I'm not gonna lie. I would be mad.
Yeah. Well, do we know it on a physical level? Not all the time. However, there have been readings I've done in which um, the soul will say, I knew I wasn't going to be around for a long time. And that gets into the whole other thing that I wrote about in the first section of Wisdom from the Spirit World. You signed up for this. And that means these things called blueprints. Blueprints are what the soul determines or plans prior to being born into the physical world. And each of us has done that. You're not going to remember that on a conscious level, but the Akashic is not conscious, it's in the subconscious.
Right. Okay. So when you say contract, for people who may not understand, what do you mean by that?
Well, I don't use the word contract, I use the word blueprint, because a blueprint is sort of it's a design. And yes, it's a plan, but you can go in and maybe adjust things within the blueprint, whereas with a contract, you sign on the dotted line, and there's not a lot of wavering with that. I believe that we always have free will. There
Mhm.
are certain lessons that the soul needs more experience with, or perhaps its first time exposure with. So, that's all planned before we come here. Are you going to know that and go, oh, yeah, when I was sitting with my spirit guides, I planned, to have an accident? No, most people do not recall that. But it's the same way when we die, because we have the life review. I'm sure some of your listeners have heard that. We get that life review. How well did I do with that particular lesson? Um, so are they a reality? Absolutely. I have seen them. I would not have written about them, and I've written about them in all of my books. If I hadn't personally seen that we do sign up for certain experiences.
We have about 4.5 minutes to go with you tonight, and it's been absolutely amazing. And I'm so happy that we got to do this interview tonight with you, Carol, because it's been a lot of fun. You mentioned that, that people can open up and become more obvious, or what's the word I'm looking for? More open towards having these type of encounters and experiences with spirit. Do you recommend it for everybody? or is this something that a person should think about before they decide to delve right into their own spiritual findings?
Well, no, I think the less we think, the better. That's the problem with humanity. People think too much. Um, so I recommend doing very simple meditation, and it's called mindfulness. And that's simply where you focus on your breath. Um, a child can do that. A little kid can do that, where you just close your eyes for a couple of minutes, and what it does is stops that train of obsessive treadmill mind chatter that all of us suffer from. So, mindfulness is very simple. It doesn't require any money. You don't have to buy anything. You can do it anywhere. Don't close your eyes when you're driving. But um, it's virtually, the other thing that's everybody can have access to is nature. I always say, if you want to understand God, go out into nature, because it operates in the perfection of that higher mind. Except where humans have interfered with it. But these are simple things, and accessible things that people can do to really, particularly, find peace. And gosh knows we need that today. We need to know what peace is. There's so much anxiety. Um, there's so much dissension. So these are simple things that anyone can do.
Love it. With 2 minutes to go, how can we find your books? How can we get in contact with you and learn more about this or get a reading?
Well, through my website, which I know that you put up, soulvisions.net. All of the books are also on Amazon and Kindle. Also, my publisher, Collective Inc., the imprint that my books are under, is Sixth Books, Barnes and Noble. And yes, you will not get an autographed copy, though, through them. You would only get that through me. Um, and I also have CDs. I made an intuition home study course, 3 CD set. I have a meditation CD. So through my website, and I also have Facebook, and that's facebook.com/soul medium. The word soul, SOUL, you have a soul, plus the word medium.
I think it's great. And what do you plan on doing for the remainder of the year? Do you have any projects coming up?
Oh, yes. I will be working on promotion of the new book. So the phase of writing is complete, and editing. And so next, I will be doing the wonderful podcasts like yours, and hopefully again, and others. Um, and probably doing a lot of speaking. And then I'll probably write another book in a couple of years. That seems to be the way it goes.
Well, that would be awesome. That would be awesome, because I think, we have to be able to get the message out. And this is a great way for you to get your message out to people and help educate them and to understand about the do's and don'ts and the rights and wrongs and what a good reading is, and how to get in touch with their spiritual side. You deserve credit for that.
Yeah, the main thing is for people to know that, and I'll leave the audience with this, is to know that you have within you that precious resource. It's not out there. It's not in the outer world. It's within you. And it's simply a matter of listening to it, tapping into it, and living by it.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight, Carol. We very much appreciate it. Carole J. Obley, everybody. Once again, her website, soulvisions.net, soulvisions.net. Check it on out. We will be back with hour 3 of Spaced Out Radio, where we're going to get right into the UFO report with Courtney Marcassani and Nicole Sackage. We'll be right back. All right, we are clear.
Thank you for
Thank you.
having me, Dave. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
I appreciate that. It's been a lot of fun. A lot of fun. So thank you very much. And let us know when your next book comes out.
Okay, I'm sure Gavin will contact you and
Sure.
have a good rest of the show.
I will. Thank you, my friend. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye. All right. I will be right back. And hard to breathe out of a nose that doesn't work, Deb. Hard to breathe. I will be right back, everybody. All right, everybody. Almost time. Hi, Zoe Phillips on Facebook. How you doing? Sweet Tony D, how you doing? This sticky note, Brandon, that's from one of our listeners who passed away. And I told him when he was ready to come into studio to move the after he passed, to move the sticker. And he did. Tewaz, it's always good to have you here. Thank you tonight to Deborah Rooney, Lavira, Louis ×2, Blue Cruz, Thomas, Rob, and Big Dog for the super chats tonight. Very much appreciate you tuning us on in. Here we go with the next hour. And welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Always appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. You can join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Wanchancy. Wanchancy is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. We're going to kick things off right now with Courtney Marcassani and Nicole Sakic as we're going to get deep into the UFO world tonight. Courtney is, the radio. You can't see this. She's pulling her hair back, which means it's going to be down to some serious time tonight. Serious time. And Nicole, thank you for joining us. Courtney, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic. You know, I'm going to brag here for a second, if you don't mind. I'm going to brag because, you know,
Not brag on me.
Well, I do brag on you. You know that, and you hate it when I do that. But I weighed myself at the gym today. I'm actually 15 pounds down in the last 5 weeks. 15 pounds. I hit a marker today, and I was very, very happy with that. Very happy with that.
That's great news. That has to make you feel good, right?
You know, it does. It's nice having energy again. It's nice being able to do things like eat healthy, breathe, not coughing all the time. Oh, yeah, we are improving. Nicole, your hair is looking fantastic tonight. I think this is 2 good hair days in a row that you've had. So welcome back to Spaced Out Radio.
You're welcome. I mean, it's the moon cycle there. That's why I'm having the great hair days. But thank you guys both. Like Courtney, I'm excited to have our chat tonight. If we're still going to chat about what we talked about earlier and just string Dave along.
Yes. So let's get to the audience here so they kind of understand. So a few hours ago, I got a message from Nicole saying her and Courtney had been chatting all day and that they had some interesting things to share, and that Nicole had to come on to join Courtney because it was UFO time for these ladies. And, you know, when they talk, I'll be honest with you, I listen, because these two ladies are probably two of the most in-depth people when it comes to the story of what is really happening in ufology, and we're lucky to always have them as part of the Spaced Out Radio family here. But one of the things I want to quickly talk about was an article on Liberation Times where journalist Christopher Sharp wrote a story that, there's really seeming to be a lot of not disinformation, pardon me, but a lot of discourse between the ODNI, which is the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and those who are running the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, known as ARROW. And it's all over UFOs. Courtney, have you read this article? I mean,
Yes, I did. And I thought what was really interesting about all of this is that ODNI were included in the ARROW investigation. So here's one of the things that I pulled out from the article that I thought was really interesting. One intelligence expert speaking to Liberation Times on condition of anonymity contested this assertion as the reasoning behind ODNI's silence, because they're basically saying the ODNI is not coming out on the record and validating the ARROW report. So here's what the intelligence insider says. This seems disingenuous. ARROW was chartered as a jointly managed office between ODNI and DoD. Its products have the de facto imprimatur of both departments. It undermines the credibility of future reports to have the fact of internal disavowal be obscured. So that's somebody who wanted to come out on the record to Liberation Times and basically say that these two offices were connected. They always were, but ODNI not coming out on the record and validating this is very important. And there's another quote that's important, but let's let Nicole make her comment on it.
I didn't read it, so I don't want to comment on it. I'm usually very up to speed on what Chris Sharp has to say, so I'm disappointed in myself. But I think you probably covered it with that summary. So
there's another thing I want to tell everybody who's listening that they need to look into for their own research. There was another ODNI comment about the classification of the documents, and the other quotation that's really important from the ODNI is all current or former ODNI employees, such as staff, contractors, detailees, or assignees, must abide by instruction 80.04. ODNI employees are required to sign a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA, which is binding even after the individual leaves the IC. So then they go on to say instruction 80.04 implements the requirements for protecting classified material as found in the NDA. So I think that that's something that we need to dig into as a community, is how all of this is classified. This is one of the things that sticks out to me moving forward, and we really need to investigate these claims by the insider.
Courtney, I want to ask you about the discourse between the ODNI and the ARROW program. I mean, this is literally one hand slapping the other for, basically commenting on comments that aren't true. And there's been a lot of accusations about the report that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick wrote, his final report coming out, since he stepped down as director back in December of last year. I mean, this is kind of scathing, saying, no, we really didn't say that. We're really not supporting this. Why are you speaking for us when you're speaking against what we actually believe? I mean, does this really show how divided they even are in the Pentagon about things like?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, because you have this group who's formally together. They sat in on meetings together. Hicks, Susan Goff, and the ODNI head. They all sat in on meetings together, and now ODNI haven't even loaded up the report on their website, and they're not validating it. So that shows you there's a clear division.
Yeah, I actually had a source send me this article today, say, could you really believe this? And, the source, you have one of the same sources as well that we talked to on Signal. And, and I was very much in awe that the ODNI would come out and really, kind of deny everything that's going on. I mean, it really shows, like people that I've talked to over the years, Courtney and Nicole, they have really said that this is a 50-50 split in Washington, D.C. 50% want the news to come out. The other 50% want it to go back under the rug. And they are really butting heads. And I think this really proves it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Nicole, I can't hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, I wasn't butting in yet. I was going to say this leads to kind of what Courtney and I just discussed sort of all afternoon. And did you guys check your email by chance?
Yes, I did.
Because Courtney, I knew you would notice the date on the top of it because it says May 1985. And then the second
Yes.
email I sent you is the agenda of the Advanced Theoretical Working Group conference that was held.
Right.
And just the agenda, we kind of see what's happening today with this overlay. And even though our politics are divided, these groups, these UFO groups often get divided too. So back then it seemed that we had 2 groups, maybe 3 groups at play, and now we have maybe like 7. So how do we get from there to here and we're still talking about the same crash retrievals and the same SAPs and how they can change names and how people can be read in or not read in? So,
and the conversations, Dave, that Nicole and I have been having over the past couple of weeks that really came to a head today, and us looking at all this stuff shaking down, and it looks like a reboot, like a replay. Like we've been talking about with the Blue Book project, and this looks a lot like it. It's very similar, where you have this investigation, they go into the files, they look at the history, and then they pretty much disavow all of the potential classified programs. Although, the one that does stand out in this report is Blue Kona. I want to try to read more and learn more about that program. I hadn't heard about that. So I think that there are some things that have come to light that are positive, but by and large, it's mostly saying we reject this. There's no craft, there's no non-human intelligence, and we know that there are both.
Or the other part of the rejection is they don't get the funding to pursue what they need to pursue to collect the data, to explore further in, or if they do, it's only limited, to maybe a first time funding, a first time meeting. So to me, with what we're discussing now and the Arrow report and what's being left out of it, we know they leave pretty much like a 30 to 40 year gap, and they're leaving out the 90s.
Well, that's been the interesting part about the conversations that we've been having about the official meetings that were held way back in the 80s for UFO working, and then the ones that were unofficial, that were outside of the government. And so there's been like 2 parallel paths this whole time, which it's so interesting to see it all coming to a head again nowadays because it's in the present. And so, that's 30 plus 40 years of the same type of shenanigans going on that are coming back in the present.
It seems like this line of what's official and what's maybe represented in an official capacity, that seems to be sort of maybe a pattern that we've seen with these groups along the decades as well. So that's what caught my interest when Arrow, you just brought up Blue Kona. Isn't that what second ATIP was supposed to be?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's funny that you guys bring up Kona Blue tonight, because, or Blue Kona, whatever it's called, because I actually had a source message me when I was asking him about the entire program, and he says Kona Blue was not named but described in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon at the end of chapter 3. And then he goes on to say Kona Blue was the proposed program code name, not the classification for the follow-up to OSAP. Dr. James Lukaski wanted OSAP's objectives to continue out of the Pentagon's clutches and inside the DHS. I don't know what the DHS is. This failed. Some elements were rescued into ATIP, which was a project more than a program. ATIP was funded through an existing BLI into the GDIP. And I don't know any of these acronyms, but we're going to run with it. The Pentagon could honestly deny it ever existed because it could not find a separate BLI. That's very interesting.
BLI, and what was the other short? G something?
It was GDIP.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not up on my government acronyms as much as I should be.
Well,
Oh,
can be.
Does that mean it's time? Do we all get to wave tonight?
Go for it.
Did you say government acronyms?
Yes.
Is this when everybody at Spaced Out Radio decides to wave to everybody in the CIA, FBI, DIA?
Thank you, Patriots.
I don't know. You're what's your
Hello, how are you to all the agents and agencies out there in Spaced Out Radio Land tuning us in? Give us a call sometime. You already have the phone number, so we don't need to post it. Yeah, just give us a call. Say hello. That's all we want in life. Just say hello. All right. See, my NSA hat. Thank you.
That was fun. Hi, everybody.
Yes. So you guys, as we got about 7.5 minutes to go here before we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour, Courtney and Nicole, you guys were chatting today about some information that you have come up with, and let's just get into the juice. Let's go for it.
Well I kind of started today with an official known group in the 80s, or at least an official meeting. We know it's documented. Grant and I and Melinda, Leslie, broke 2 sets of notes with it. We're talking about Jack Hoke's Advanced Theoretical Physics Working Group conference notes, along with Oak Shannon's. And they kind of coincide with the Wilson Davis notes. So it's like the notes on top of the notes on top of the notes. So between some sources that I speak to pretty regularly now, and some also that coincide with some of my friends, we have outed several people that this meeting did actually take place. It's been admitted to that there was one meeting, one official meeting, and everything since that meeting was they officially called themselves the UFO Working Group instead of the Advanced Theoretical Physics Working Group, which was official, which was held. Courtney, help me out because I'm going to forget my own notes. At the Army Science, where was
conference
it held?
room?
The Army Science conference room. So that was set up. It was official, and people of interest were invited. Now, there's a timeline and a story that certain researchers started to call the UFO Working Group, and that's known as the Aviary, which and Dave knows, and some of the audience members might know that Grant and I are now working on a film project or 2, and one is called The Aviary and one is called The Memo about the Wilson Davis notes. So the notes and the notes and the notes will come out. So we're kind of exploring this territory that now crosses over. We know about this group in the 80s and a spinoff group, and we know about some players in this, what we've called the Cosmic Club, what they've called themselves, what other people have named them. And now we need to take it into the 90s, because the 90s is what Arrow left out. And that's what we want to get. That's where the juice is, I think. So Courtney's on the juice. I'm on the juice. Dave, what do you want to know?
Well, I think it's interesting that there's 3 sets of notes that all corroborate the meeting, and that we know that the individuals were at that meeting all started different groups, including things like TTSA.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, go ahead, Nicole.
NIDS. I was just throwing out some other groups. NIDS was formed. BASS was formed.
Yeah, so there's all these splinter groups that spun off from these original working groups, one official working group, and then one that was done outside of the government. And they all have popped up. So this is what Nicole and I were talking about today, is how there are all these different groups now that spun up from these original groups, and they're still in existence. They're just taking on new names, but they're similar faces from the original aviary.
Well, and so you have an official group and you have a splinter group, and that seems to be where there's dissension. Like we talk about, like, who wants this out, who doesn't want this out, how could it be put out in this way or that way? That might be some of the same behavior we're seeing going on right now within Arrow or within these different government groups that are supposed to be getting along and sharing their information with Arrow. But we've also heard they've been stonewalled along the way. We know the Air Force has stonewalled them with lingo, like, oh, well, we don't look into space stuff, just atmosphere stuff. There's always that thing at play. So not only with the lingo of what they call crafts or what they call beings or what they call the programs, the lingo switch up is everywhere, but there is a pattern to be continued.
Go ahead, Dave. You were going to say something and I stepped on you.
Oh, no, I'm just taking this all in right now. I am taking this all in. Who are the players that are doing this, Courtney, Nicole? Who are the people? Do we know the people, or are they names that we wouldn't even recognize?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. These are all people that we would all recognize, but there's some people that aren't out yet. So here's who we covered today in our shakedown. We covered the TTSA stuff. We covered Enigma. We covered Enigma as a group that's out there that's kind of a spin up from an old story, an old history. Nicole, I don't know if you want to go into that or not. You don't have to, but we connected the dots on it. There's just a lot connected to the past that I think people are forgetting about when they're looking at these new groups, because we just basically did a whole chart on all these different groups that all line up with the past. And you would know names like Hal Puthoff, Gary Nolan, who's in the Soul Foundation, the Peter Thiel, he is somebody who started his own, organization with Enigma with this other lady. I can't say her name because she wants to be confidential. But all those names, right?
Yeah. And I think I think how we sorted it is we were trying to what the known past and these groups that have had decades of people surrounding them. So we kind of know what their intentions have been or how they've interacted with the community. It's always been this probably more on the nefarious side with Enigma right now, just with the way that they've emerged and how we've looked at them. And so when you compare things to the past, you also compare the types of people that help them start groups, or maybe the experiencers that they speak with. And that's, I think, maybe where we could start talking about Peter Thiel, and, compare him to some of the known people in the past, or maybe not even Peter Thiel exclusively, but compare somebody like, well, we've already brought up TTSA, so we could have the whole what is Tom DeLonge debate. And even Brandon Fugel, like we could compare him to people in the past in the same spirit that maybe Stephen Greenstreet has pointed out, but maybe in a friendlier light. We could do a character comparison like that. So we could spend an entire show on Enigma Labs, though. So,
and you guys hold on right there. Courtney Marcassani and her UFO report with special guest Nicole Sackett tonight. We're getting deep into what is happening in ufology right now as we speak on Spaced Out Radio. Interesting times around here. Keep your ears open. Keep your eyes to the sky as the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio is next. All right, we're clear.
So Nicole, do you want to talk about do you want to talk about our information that came out today through the first thing that we discussed when we started talking, what you also mentioned to Dave on the chat space, or no? Should we wait on that?
Was that when we investigated the periodic table? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you think we should? I thought we decided not to, but if you changed your mind in 8 hours,
Well, somebody brought it up in the chat. I don't want to say any names, but I think we should definitely talk about what we uncovered today without going into the not naming names.
Right. Well, wasn't that interesting? And I blamed it on you guys, like stirring up you both.
You guys can always blame stuff on me.
Well, it's not just you guys. Like, I say you guys because I think you people I guess have been dropping these little Easter eggs about it more so than anybody else has over the last month, 2 months. How long has this kind of been going on now since
it started when I got back? Yeah, it started when I got back in December for Christmas, and then in January is when we leaked the story.
So, I mean, how I first heard it was, I mean, nobody has mentioned this element by name. So then, I mean, that left my mind to wonder. Of course, you're like, 115! This is looking for 115. And then,
so yeah, I mean, that with the story as I heard it was like, I guess a truncated version.
mm-hmm.
So for the people that are in the chat that are listening to this, Dave and I basically broke a story about one of the whistleblowers, and we've kind of been covering it ever since, but without talking about his name or without really releasing the whole story. We already did release it, but we had to retract it because it was some part of it could have been damaging for him, but it has been leaked again on a podcast by somebody else who was an analyst, and they leaked the story. We actually learned more about the story by this leak, right, Dave?
Yes. Yes, we did.
So what I'm basically about to say is that we learned more today about the story.
Yes, and in about 3 minutes, we could talk about that.
Okay, so you don't want to talk about it right now. All right, that's fine. That's okay.
Oh, I thought the whole idea was to talk about it in the YouTube part and not the live, broadcast.
Oh,
the entire North American continent.
Dave is not saying that. Dave is saying that he wants to talk about it on the live radio part, so that's cool.
Do you want to, Courtney? I mean,
well, I'm just so excited to have more of the story, and it's all coming together, and so I'm just thrilled.
Well,
I don't want to list anybody's name because I promised.
There's going to be a debate now, though. There's going to be a debate. So,
well, I'm all about healthy debate.
Well, like thorium fits one very interesting group of subset interest, and then Terrellium.
How about you just wait like 2 minutes? Wait 2 minutes.
Again, I have to make sure I'm pronouncing the science correctly.
We shouldn't pronounce the actual element. We probably should not pronounce the actual element because that could be. I was them playing it back at us.
I was calling it number 52.
Oh, okay.
Gee whiz. Cal123, how you doing? Let's see. Tantalizing Todd Turner says thorium nuclear plasma drive.
Bingo.
So Todd Turner's on it. Todd Turner has obviously either been listening to our phone conversations or Todd Turner is a source of some material. So let's hear it.
Todd Turner is a time traveler.
Okay.
Todd Turner.
Well, let us just say, just in case, hi, Todd Turner. Welcome.
Look at this. Look at this.
Here at Spaced Out Radio. We very much appreciate you tuning us in. I know you're probably laughing. Give us a call sometime. You already have the phone number. You don't need me to give it to you. All right, that's enough for a hat. Hold on, ladies. Big thank you tonight to W. Decker, Lavira ×2, Deborah Rooney, Blue Cruz, Thomas, Rob, Big Dog, and Louie ×2 for the great super chats tonight. Don't forget to shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. So let's get going right now. And here we go with the final half hour Spaced Out Radio tonight. It's a UFO report with Courtney Marcassani and Nicole Sakic happening right now. But before we bring the ladies back in, let us remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out my swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here we go. Courtney Marcassani and her UFO report with special guest Nicole Sakic right now. And during the break, we were talking about the periodic table.
We were.
And why is this now important? Courtney?
Well, I got a call that I missed from Nicole this morning because I was still sleeping. But I got up and I got the call and I called her back right away. And she was asking me about somebody contacting her this morning and asking her a specific question. And I was able to go ahead and get it verified. So, Nicole, why don't you share your part of that? And then I'll wrap it up with what I followed through with and what answer I got.
Well, you guys are sort of my friends, so you know I have these unusual sleep patterns. And between work and how I spend my time and how I write or read or research and all this stuff. So sometimes the people I speak with all across the globe, I'm on these crazy time zone, messes with. So I had a weird sleep today. It was in the middle of the day. And so when I got up in the afternoon, it was somebody else's morning, I think, like in the future. But they were just getting to what you had done, Courtney, with the Winnipeg Experiencer group with Grant and I. So, this is a friend of mine, a pal that sort of follows along, but might be a few steps behind. With the day-to-day of Grant Cameron is what I should say. Cause he does stuff multiple times a day with various groups and people. He's always talking. So Courtney gave this like blast out talk and sort of talked about this dynamic of meeting the whistleblower and some of the details that he's been able to share about this personal encounter, which parts of it have come out on the internet. Parts of it have come out on Reddit or social media here on Space Out Radio. So we kind of reiterated all that. But then there was this very specific like subset of question that, only very limited people had heard what the specific element was. So hearing thorium made me ask Courtney if she had heard thorium as well, but it wasn't thorium. It was a different element on the table, and we'll just call it number 52. So
yeah, what happened was Nicole asked me, was it a fuel that the NHI asked the whistleblower for, or was it an element? And I said, I heard the story as it was an element. And so I followed up and was like, were you asked for thorium? And he said it wasn't thorium. And then he gave me the proper element. And so this was kind of like our own little collective Bob Lazar moment. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, we've got the name of the element. We've got the name of the actual element. And then he went on into a further, little bit more detail about other stuff further in the story that I hadn't even heard before. So we had a major groundbreaking day today. But then I find out that other people know about this plasma drive. And how many people know about this stuff? I'm always surprised that they're always like, is it thorium? Is it thorium? And I'm like, are you kidding?
Well, that apparently, to, I guess, continue from this line of thinking is this plasma drive that utilizes thorium is kind of linked to working tech and ways that we could possibly get to Mars right now. So, I mean, this is something in the scope of real, not necessarily, you know, a blue being looking for a part or some gas for his egg-shaped vehicle. Like,
It was huge. It was huge because, first of all, I hadn't heard what element it was. Second of all, parts of the story have come into shape now. First of all, I had never heard that there was a crash before. There was the convoy in the
I'm
desert.
not sure if it was a crash or if it was like a landing in distress. You know, that's a detail I would like to sort, honestly, because the way I understand it, there might be this corroborating evidence from the actual base where this alleged UFO took off from. So if they can corroborate that with what this convoy saw and then interacted with, like they thought they were going to help some humans.
Okay, so that part of it I never had heard before. So
And I had heard that I had heard an element was mentioned, but I had also heard that it was referred to as they needed fuel. And then I also heard early in the whispers of this that it was an actual part, like they were seeking a part to fix their craft. So I think that's now been determined as maybe telephone or hearsay.
okay, so let's clear it up because everybody in the chat space is really confused. So we need to go back and kind of break some stuff down so this makes sense to everybody. So one of the things that we weren't given approval to talk about on Spaced Out Radio, because Dave's been the person to confirm what we could talk about and not talk about, is the actual story that the whistleblower gave us. Go ahead, Dave.
No, I'm just waving because you mentioned my name.
I poked you.
Yeah, well, it's Dave's show. It's Dave's show, so I don't really want to step out of line,
Yeah, Dave, how far do you want us to regurgitate?
I don't want any names. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Let's
So we're not.
sources.
So how I summed it up, I guess I could say to the people, because there was a couple this morning that were asking, how I summed it up was the gist of the story was this convoy that included our witness saw this craft that looked in distress, possibly land or crash, and they diverted to approach and help because this was in the spectrum of what they officially do. So as they approached where they thought this thing went down, they were met by what they thought was another human until they got close. And part of maybe the details of that story is one of the person in the convoy was really freaked out when they realized that this human didn't necessarily look human, was blue, might have tried to run this person over. One person kind of, I guess, tuned out, and then one person was able to remain calm and interact with this being, and the being wanted this element number 52. There was interaction about why didn't the beings go to the base, which was close, and this being allegedly told the human that was helping him, that could hear him telepathically speaking to him, that the humans at the base were murderers. So they didn't want to go there. And then that's where I kind of lose the story of how the rest of the interaction went. Does this person, get back in the vehicle and drive off, and the blue guy waltz back towards his egg craft? Or so that's how I surmised it. Ticked kind of these points my people this morning were like, yes, this is what I've heard. This was the part I heard, but they were all convinced it was thorium because they work with and/or are surrounded by people that work with this, in real life, what we're trying to do with it and how it could be utilized. So I thought that was interesting. Maybe it's not number 52. Maybe it's both of them. If I'm going to keep speculating, maybe what people are working with now is a more primitive version of what is used later that the blue guy needs. Are we sure the blue guy was a guy? That's another question I have.
I don't know. And the story that was told to me was very truncated. What you're sharing is like you're patching together a couple different sides of this and bringing into it one whole narrative. But that's not exactly how I heard it. So when I shared it on SOR, when I had first heard it, I didn't have permission to share it either. And I misunderstood that. I was only shared a screen image and asked not to share the screen image, but I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to actually share the story. So
Right.
when I came on to SOR, I shared the story exactly as I read it. And that has all been verified since. And so you're basically going into other pieces of the story and kind of weaving it all together, and you're also saying that you're getting validation on that, right? From other people.
Well, I mean, I think I'm getting educated speculation, educated inquiry, possibly. Because of, this isn't just like, hey, I found you on Facebook. Like,
Well, there was another person who leaked the story out that was actually in that community last week, and they went on to a podcast and tweeted about it on Twitter last week. So it's out there now. It's been covered.
Did I see that? Did I comment on
No,
that?
I don't think you did see it.
Maybe I
Dave and
didn't.
it was sent to me,
Yeah.
actually. It was sent to me. I think Dave, I sent it to Dave, but I don't know if I think I also sent it to you too, Nicole, in the chat, maybe. If not, I'll resend it.
I might have intended to read it and then fell asleep or something. Talk to somebody in a different time zone. So, I think that's also interesting because, I think some of the other discussions that are happening with people like me after they're hearing some of these details, or maybe the telephone game is being played, like,
Mhm. Let me just hop in here for a second because I want to clarify the story, because I think that both of you are telling a lot of cool information, and there's a number of people out there who are just like, whoa, catch me up. So allegedly there was an incident with what could be an extraterrestrial that looked like a humanoid, blue in color, and it was intercepted by some agents, and they had a conversation, and he was asking for element number 52, which is tellurium. That's what we've learned tonight, to take back to his ship so he could fly away. That's the Cole's Notes version of everything.
That's not what that's not what Nicole's friend asked her about. She asked her for another element. And then I was able to confirm what the actual element was. So that's how the story went.
mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification.
I think another question maybe that might be lingering, and I don't know, maybe some very smart people in your audience, like I know they pay attention and follow the show. What could make somebody appear blue? We've all heard like the community lore about Pleiadians being blue, Octurians. I always get them wrong. Like there's these subsets of like classification. And I know some are taken very, very seriously. Like people in our community direct people to these websites and they're like, that one's real. And then you read this stuff and you're like, oh my God, I just got sucked into UFO Dungeons and Dragons. Like, what is this? Like, so, but that's another side of our community. Like, does the real come out with the fake?
Yeah.
Is that in every single layer? We think we know people that are like that and admit to it, that they do both. So,
Courtney, let me ask you this, if you don't mind, okay? Because there are so many sources talking about this alleged story of a UFO that's down. It needs some help, and it gets help from a certain number of folks. How do we know that this is real? How do we know that they're not just throwing another story out there to see if the public reacts to it?
Well, when I met with the whistleblower on the East Coast, I actually sat down with him and met him, and he showed me all of his IDs and identification, and all real. And he didn't necessarily go into details around the story. He did validate the story, but he went into much more detail about the programs that are in existence. And so these are stories that he's telling me. So I have every reason to believe him. He has worked for our government. He has testified. I have checked with other people and vetted him and his background, and they have all said, yes, he's testified. And so he's been asked potentially to come out and testify in another hearing. And that has also been fact checked. And so it's just a story at this point, right? It's somebody's story. And so when people have heard the story, like today, they went to Nicole and said, hey, is this the element or is this the fuel that the being asked for? And so I think the confusion that's coming around is some of the people trying to validate certain parts of the story and figure out where the programs are. And that's where it gets confusing, because the story isn't really even supposed to be out there yet, right?
well, ding. But yeah, this is like the tag team. Here I am. I'm tagged in. How can I people's elbow this out there? This is also where it pays to know your boring nuts and bolts khaki pant mafia side of ufology, because there are similarities. And this is also what's fun about connecting experiencers with other experiencers, or when you find elements of stories in somebody else's story. So when I hear a story like this, it's kind of like I just pointed out, it makes me run every blue bean story I've ever come across in ufology. So find me all the blue beans. That ticks off a whole list. And then now that we're hearing little details, let's pull out every case I've ever heard that includes an egg-shaped craft. There's a list. Let's include every case that we've heard about with a craft leaving a base, possibly in distress, or landing possibly in distress. And then you can kind of cross-reference a story like, hey, wasn't that craft in Socorro, Mexico that Lonnie Zamora saw? Didn't he maybe think it was in distress? And it was egg-shaped, and it landed, and there was a being, but it was in a jumpsuit. You couldn't see what color it was. Did have arms and legs. I don't know. How did that thing take off? There wasn't speculation. But then there's other landing cases at bases. A famous one is Holloman. Like, did that craft take off because it was running away from humans? Did it take off because it was like picked up one and then was like, see you later, dudes? Like, there's all these little spin-off stories that are kind of relatable, but it's not exactly the same. There's also the stories about multiple people that encounter the beings, and one of them can telepathically link. And one will freak out and try to run it over or shoot it with a gun or beat it up or throw a punch. And then there's the one that's like, oh, catatonic, can't do anything. And then they all remember everything differently. So, you know, there is similarities like that. And if you don't throw yourself into the 80 plus history of modern ufology, then you're stunned and shocked by the blue bean in an egg that possibly crashed and wants some gas. Like, you know, we'll see. It'll be interesting if more than that person comes out. It'll be interesting if something from the base emerges, you know. We always talk about these multiple witness cases, so how can we take them seriously? Like, Lonnie Zamora wasn't taken seriously, and he had police officers like at a landing site. They collected physical evidence, and people laughed at him for 30 years. So good luck. Good luck, new guys.
We got 1 minute to go here before we have to say goodnight to everybody. Courtney, I want to give you the final word on this, on the UFO report. Where's this all heading?
Well, I feel, and I've said this before to everybody, I feel that I've been put into a really tough position because, you know, I'm trying to honor the whistleblower's request to protect him, you know, and not blast out things, you know, inappropriate stuff. So I just want to say that, you know, the story that I heard was a very truncated version of the story of what's out right now. And that's basically because people are trying to put together the timeline of hearing different things. But the original story was actually put up on the UAP task force as a story to investigate because they were putting the task force together. They wanted to look at, you know, different programs and where back engineering and these other things might have happened. So that's where this originally came from, was from a UAP task force investigation. I want everybody to know that. And that I basically leapfrogged over, you know, this disclosure of this story because I had a source in the UAP task force that saw it. And that's why we're talking about it now.
Courtney Marcassani on the UFO Report. You are the best. Same as you, Nicole Sackage, our special guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We very much appreciate all of you tuning us on in tonight. And there we go.
Okay, who is Todd Turner?
We own the night. It's so weird without the audio overlay. I'm not gonna lie. I
know that's changing this weekend. I am totally working in studio all weekend.
I want to point out one final thing about what Courtney just mentioned, that was an official case that they investigated with UAPTF or wanted to look into officially. Way back in the May of 1985, part of their agenda, did you read the bottom part of it where it was like, let's look at these known cases?
Yeah, I want to print out every copy of the notes and look at each one in detail and highlight all the overlap of all the witnesses that were at that meeting.
These notes can be found in the, what is it called? The Archives of the
Impossible?
No, the Archives of the Unexplained, aka we all call it the Swedish Archive. I sent you the entire link.
Is that Klaus Svan?
Well, there's a lot of people that contribute and help people digitize and send their files and their stuff to this archive.
This is going to be really, really, really scandalous, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it because I'm feeling kind of punchy tonight. But so I met Klaus Svan at the Archives of the Impossible because he was just different Klaus. But that's why I asked him. I asked him if he was Tiny Klaus, and he's like, "No, I'm not. I'm not Tiny Klaus," you know. And I was like, "Oh, Klaus, okay," because I didn't know how he's affiliated. So of course I asked him if he's Tiny Klaus because I'm an idiot. Anyway,
I would have. You're not an idiot. You got to get the obvious ones out of the way.
You guys are going to love this. This is like the National Enquirer scoop of ufology. So he's taking all these pictures of Diana Pasulka, right? And she's like, she's sitting for him and he's taking all these photos. He's getting really close and he's backing up. I mean, it's making me uncomfortable because I'm just standing there by Diana just going, who is this guy, right? So
pose.
He's the Swedish ufology guy who's been getting all these, all these records and putting them in this huge vault. And I just heard recently that he doesn't believe in experiencers. He doesn't believe in experiencer encounters. I just found this out recently. I'm like, how could he not?
Well, that's why I call some people khaki pant mafia. Like, they're well-intentioned nuts and bolts researchers, so they don't necessarily have to dive into the woo when they want to stay in the physical.
I was so
I know
surprised.
it's stunning, I think, these days. I think that feels like very 1970s way of looking at the phenomenon.
Yeah, well, it's one thing to be like nuts and bolts, and it's another thing to just be like, very skeptical and
I
negative
honestly don't
experiences.
care if they do their diligence in archiving the way that he has. Yeah, and in the same vein that everybody's going to have their own opinion on this, but as long as their intentions are good and they're motivated to put action behind what they're doing. I mean, that website and that archive is amazing.
Oh, he's beyond reproach in terms of all the work that he's done, and that,
It's
the way
also
he's cataloged
everybody with
everything.
his archives. So, like David Marler, what he's put together is amazing. The
Yes.
archive at Roswell is amazing. The archive of the impossible might be more official because it's affiliated with Rice. But then, okay, so if we're talking weird things you hear about
Video
people,
right after this. You're going to hear me playing audio here because I'm
oh
editing.
no, I totally thought it was your doppelganger.
You
Echo
still with
voice.
us, Dave? People in the chat are concerned that you've gotten into a catatonic state. Are you?
Oh,
It's a high sign, bro.
I'm just paying attention, and I recognize that, and I'm telling my audience, pay attention to what Courtney and Nicole are saying.
Well, this is how we usually have our morning coffee. But so what I've heard, okay, so Isaac Coy helped us digitize the notes to release them. And he also started helping Grant like digitize other pieces of his own archive and his work, which if you listen to Grant talk, he's like, I'm destroying my own archives. I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, but he's taking sections and pieces of it, scanning it all. Isaac's cleaning it up for him. Grant is probably more organized than some people, but everybody's research is disorganized, like walking into a brainstorm closet full of,
I imagine Isaac Coy's is not, though. I imagine his is like a pristine, like
might be
file somewhere.
The rest of us that aren't in library sciences or have law degrees and maybe assistants that help keep us organized. But so Isaac's been helpful. Grant has also, you guys know Grant, he's Mr. Transparency. He wants his work everywhere. If anybody's interested, he'll send you the digitized copies, get it to you. You can have it for your stuff, whether you're wanting to start an AI database, machine learning this stuff, keep it in your impossible archive. Well, what we found out is, a couple years ago, Grant had this whole plan. He was going to maybe mimic Stanton Friedman a little bit and donate his physical stuff to University of Manitoba. Well, I think they said they'd take it, but only if they really have to. Well, University of Manitoba is affiliated with Rice University and the Archive of the Impossible. Well, people approach me all the time and they're like, hey, can we get this from Grant? Can we do that? Well, I've heard for the last 2 years that the Archive of the Impossible is interested in Grant's archive. Well, then Manitoba doesn't want it. Grant reached out to the Archive of the Impossible, and I've heard that it's kind of like, nah, we don't want your stuff. So is Grant
welcome back.
or is there some misinterpretation of what's going on there, or is it because Grant's stuff is already available and they're getting it that way, so they don't need it directly? Like, I don't really know what's going on, but I think that's interesting. I mean, who doesn't
It
want
is. It
files?
is interesting.
But I
waste
know
of this.
people with
Yes.
archives, so
That means certain things. Waste
2
of my
seconds,
time.
guys, there, because we are Spaced Out Radio. So glad to have you on. I want to hear some of Carol's and find her over the years.
I got one other, I guess, snippet of
We're going to hit her up on that. Carole J. and finding Spaced Out Radio Hour 2 now. Okay, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
I might have almost forgot. Oh, since you said you were feeling kind of punchy. You guys remember a couple weeks ago when I sent you that lady that's affiliated with Soul Foundation that's looking for UFO pilots?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, Grant only interviewed about 50 of them and wrote a book on it. It's just kind of funny that this lady hasn't reached out to Grant either.
Are we thinking that with the revelations today that came through about the thorium plasma drive and all of that, that we already have this technology that's, pretty advanced that we got from NHI? Is that what we're thinking? Or do we think that this is all, black tech that we've just been working on through DARPA and other projects? Because I didn't really believe that, the UFO pilots with the mental connection to the craft was actually a real thing. But now I'm starting to believe it is from some of the stories that I'm hearing.
I think whatever they may have has been compartmentalized, and possibly insights have contributed to what sneaks out in our blue tech, or out of the black world into the blue world, and maybe sees the light of day in something like the new skin on Lockheed Martin aircraft. I don't want to directly say I think, everything Philip Corso said was 100% true, but I do think they are able to push out things that could maybe work or give advantage to existing tech that we already develop or have. So,
Well, that's one of the parallelisms that I'm seeing between the Arrow report that we just read about how there are some people that they're not naming, but they're saying are talking about compartmentalized programs, right? In unsecure areas, unsecure facilities. And so they're putting stuff at risk. I read that through the report a couple of times. And you and I have been going back and talking about all these other historical things. And I was just asking you today who the Raven was. And I found on one website, the Aviary is talking about the Raven leaking out classified, compartmentalized information, to foreign groups like the KGB. And so I'm still kind of looking at this parallelism between what's happening now and what's happening in the past. And I think they might be trying to bust people that are talking about stuff that shouldn't be.
I think that there is a nefarious parallel to every push for UFO disclosure, or every popular time period for our community. And I pointed out, I think, maybe in one of our last discussions, like, maybe these little squeaks that come out, like Carter was making a push, we get the stealth program, in the 80s, Reagan may or may not have seen his own UFO and dives into it.
Right.
We talk, the 80s was when...
And welcome back.
The shuttle program was being launched. That's when our drone programs were really taking off. That's when certain satellite programs, Arrow pointed these out as well. So that was happening in the 80s. Not to mention, like, we had things like Hubble, but then we had DARPA Hubble that was floating around before we had NASA Hubble, right?
Well, yeah, I'm wondering when we're going to start getting into the NASA space program, tie-ins and their
That brings us
relationship.
into the 90s then, and we have the push to make the International Space Station more viable. That goes on for like the next 10 years. We know that there's additions being put onto that. All these things get tested before they become like official and out public. Like we know they were testing CubeSats. It's kind of like the precursor to Starlink. But how they were testing those is they actually had astronauts just like chucking them out. And then they would come back. So, I mean, we also know about like the weather satellites that whip around and take these ultra pristine, geographic weather pictures for climate, climate control and meteorology and things like that. Like there's just all these interesting overlays of what tech could possibly be. Even drone swarm technology, the little baby drone that drops out of the bigger drone and does its thing, or the drones that come in to assist, like the ones being piloted in Montana or Colorado, but are actually over the Midwest or the Mideast, Middle East. So it's stuff like that. So what's happening now in Secret Blackland that they're trying to make emerge for, the Leo economy? How many private space stations are we going to see in the next 20 years go up? We're also going to see space tourism and, hopefully we go to the moon so we can go to Mars. And they can use that plasma thing and the number 52.
The plasma drive.
thorium.
Yeah, I need to do my diligence on the plasma drive with the thorium.
I've heard that we have them. We can't slow them
Our
down
Spaced Out Radio is
to
next.
utilize them. I don't know if that's true or not. I think that might even be Star Trekian. Like, wasn't it like Zephyr Cochrane that like rocketed out into space, and it's like he made like the first warp drive, but yeah, couldn't stop it, so he was like self-sacrificed for the science. I don't know. Maybe I have my Star Trek wrong.
I don't know. I'm not a Trekkie. I did watch some Star Trek. I did read Eric Davis's traversable wormhole, paper about the Alcubierre drive and all that.
Oh, that's one. What's another one? Where's all the astronauts when you need them?
Well, I mean,
what is that? Where like the Tipler cylinder comes into play? Isn't that?
I don't know. It was really interesting, and he wrote another paper about transporting stuff through a wormhole. I read that paper as well about teleporting. The teleporting paper is actually really good.
Speaking,
I would like to teleport.
I would too.
Eric Davis wrote a good paper about it. When he was working down in Texas for Hal Puthoff, he came up with one of those papers when he was working there.
When you talk about teleportation, you think about the beam me up Scotty stuff. If you're diligent in researching this stuff, then you start coming up with a port phenomenon, things that pop in and out. Things are here.
Yeah, I do know about the apports. Yeah.
Well, and then you're like, oh, well, why did all the dudes, Grant says this all the time, why do you think they freaked out about the bulls at Skinwalker Ranch? It's because they went from there to here, and it was locked. And how did they get in? And those bulls could go in from out. It wasn't that the bulls were going to get hurt. It wasn't that they were getting mutilated. They wanted to know how they got from in to out. How does that happen? That's a port. That was
a very good Grant Cameron
I've done better. I have done better. My speed was up though. And I might have cussed. Grant doesn't really cuss. But yeah. So it's little things like that. And then you hear about what's the story we told with wasn't it one of our Spy guys, and Edgar Mitchell's like tie pin that he lost came out of the Spy
And
guy's mouth.
Basically,
And then moments later, the back of the tie pin came out too. And Mitchell hadn't seen that tie pin in like 2 years, and the other person didn't even know it existed. Like, and then there's the one where the coin falls down, I think, on stage when Hal Puthoff is given some sort of lecture or conference or speech, and it was apparently some special coin of something.
yeah. Well, and Uri Geller used to do that, where he would bring stuff. I think he was able to do some apport or teleportation.
Well, you hear about this stuff. I think Chris Bledsoe's apports are like marbles, or almost like gemstone looking rocks. So, and I think that crosses over to Dave's Bigfoot World extravaganza, where they say Bigfoot can like give these like jewels and stuff. It's weird. Am I right in that, Dave?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
heard that.
yeah.
Julie Farrell said that happened, where a wrench showed up, the miracle wrench. She has a story about a Sasquatch and something showing up where she needed it in an emergency and it appeared. And she attributes it to the Sasquatches.
some of the other ones that I hear about, which maybe people switch up their experience or associate it with the trickster element or the hitchhiker element, and very almost poltergeisty things, but it's the disappearing stuff, your obvious stuff. Like, I had this friend of mine who had this very special toothpaste that she loved. It was like that charcoal toothpaste, and it went missing. She thought her boyfriend maybe took it. He didn't have it. You know, she searched. It's like, where does your toothpaste disappear to? You know? And she was like, this is so weird. What do I do? Have you ever heard about this? Like, is this a ghost thing? And I'm like, I don't know. It's actually like in a lot of paranormal stuff. I'm like, tell him you want it back. Just walk around and be like, all right, joke's done. Give me back my toothpaste. It was in her freezer. So why would your toothpaste be in your freezer? You know, the boyfriend didn't put it there. She'd opened the freezer, gone everywhere, looked for this thing for days, and then I tell her to do that, and it appears back up. Is that an apport, or is that a trickster, or is that, you know, what is that?
Be right back, ladies.
Okay.
Just keep chatting.
But yeah, so I don't know how to label that, but maybe somebody like, did Grant talk to you about our friend Chase Williams that's putting together this AI database?
Yeah, well, and he sent me the database, and I didn't know, are we allowed to share that or not?
Yeah, no, that's totally like, it's launching. He wants everybody to know. So if anybody wants to help and contribute, or, you know, work alongside of him, or, you know, come up with furthering, you know.
Well, he said something in an email that was like, there's all the paranormal stuff is all loaded up on here already. And so I'm thinking to myself,
he's archived like 7 million things already. So yeah.
So
that's already searchable. Yeah. So he wants to add more though. Like, I sent him the archive we talked about earlier and was like, hey, get in touch with these people. And, you know, we hear about people like Isaac Coy right now is learning is using like learning language model, machine learning stuff to organize his archives, his digital archives, and be able to search them, make them more searchable. So, you know, it might be a bigger database than that, because it is including so much high strangeness, where we are seeing like the archives of the impossible, this might be even bigger than that. So,
Well, I was interested in taking all the symbols that all the
Mhm.
experiencers have had, because that's what I wrote about, was the symbols and the symbol language and light language,
Symbol,
and that's
light
coming up right
language,
now. What's that?
Chase. I think Chase is including all these little subsets and making them very searchable and accessible. And yeah, I mean, 4 years ago, I didn't know what light language was. You know what I mean? Like, or to know how to search it to include it in other categories. So I think tools like this are going to be, of course, the future. And AI is going to help us find the aliens.
Well, I thought it would be interesting if we took all the symbols that all these people had gotten in downloads and put it into a database and then did some AI analysis on it to see if there were the associations that these people had, the experiencers had any kind of
Yeah.
connection,
Essentially,
if there was a connection or there was the same association. Because you always hear Grant say that when people have downloads, it's their filter, right? That filters some of it out through their own belief system. So I'm just wondering if there would be some kind of unified thing that we could figure out through an AI language learning program.
I think so. I think it'll help streamline the way weirdos research. Like you mentioned symbols to me. I came across light language with Grant. Of course, other symbols in the community are like the triangle or like these different sacred geometry shapes. And then, of course, you have the symbols like what appeared on the Roswell craft or the craft of unknown origin. And that's where it kind of really hits home for me because, like, Jim Peniston's crew researching those symbols, they've been able to pick eerily similar symbols out of various cultures, whether it's like Native American first tribes or um, in
I want
China
to ask
or
you
South
this because this came
America.
up.
And
I
so
have to,
or Egypt, like you do see some similar patterns. In the light language stuff, I started to research like triangles or like that cosmic spiral that you see. You can
mhm.
find a lot of that in um I don't want to say like Native American writing because they didn't really have a writing, but like their pictures of how they might represent something you might find on like maybe equate it to like cave art, or like a marker of some sort. So not necessarily writing, but the symbolism's there, like you might see a map and water might represent something, or a triangle might be a teepee, or, things like that. So it could take me years to try to piece all that together. I think what Chase is doing, if you plug in the right stuff and gather the right information to feed the machine, then it's going to do it in 20 freaking seconds. And I'm going to be like, damn.
Well, I have to ask you this because it came up today. Somebody else asked me this because you and I had spoken about this before with Jim Peniston and him receiving the binary code. And I have 3 questions. You might not be able to answer them, but did he get locations? Did he get locations from the binary code? Because I thought he did.
Yeah, he did.
So Peniston got locations through the binary code. Now, when he got the binary code, did he remember? Okay, there it is. Did he remember the binary code as it came in, or was that something that they had to actually go in and use hypnosis to get him to remember?
No, it wasn't hypnosis. It was like in the day or two following the encounter, like it was just like nagging at him that he had to write this out, whatever it was that was bothering him. He couldn't sleep. And I think the way he describes is that he wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and he realized he had 15 pages. I think it's 15. And then it was like it was done. He could sleep. He was, the symptoms wore off, is how I kind of describe it. So then that was just shelved. He had already been debriefed, so he didn't share that side officially with anybody till he came out. I think it was even after the 80s where they kind of came out together. He had the notebook from the, walking around the craft, drawing the symbols. And that same notebook was where he had written out the 15 pages. Well, somehow Linda Moulton Howe happened to see Jim flipping through this notebook to prepare for whatever show they were doing. And she was like, "What the hell is that? That looks like binary code." Jim had never really made that association. He had just kind of shoved it away as like the weirdness. And yeah, so Linda nagged him, and I think he ended up showing her a few of the pages, maybe like 4 or 8 of the pages, but not all of them. And it was Linda that started seeking out people that speak binary.
So I have to ask you this too as a follow-up. When you heard that there was hieroglyphics on the craft, because we've all heard that there was some kind of secret, or not secret, ancient language on the craft in Rendlesham, correct?
Well, I think people call it hieroglyphics because that's what it, maybe looks like it. And there's been like versions of them based off Jim's sketches, but these are the actual like official ones. Like I know the ones in the past. This was the big main symbol that when he put his hand on the craft, that when he got the download, but he felt these other ones, it was like etched in, touched this, gets the download, takes his hand off, it continues. But they've found these symbols all over the place. This triangle and the circle was represented without one of the circles at one point in time. But then when they went back and really looked at Jim's notes, they could see that there was 3, which uncovered more. Like, I think at one time there were like 10 different kinds of mathematicians that started looking at this code and working on the ones and zeros. And then yeah, I mean, it was over the course of 10 years that pieces started coming out, like locations, like there's actual locations. Then with book 2 that's coming out, like all of this continues, they like kind of jokingly, like the main researchers on this, like they call it the code within the code at this point, because from the locations, they've been able to work math out to other locations and kind of form this grid. There's even something with the shape and size of the symbols that even overlays, but within the digits and the binary, they started finding stuff like the fine structure, the fine structure constant, like the golden ratio in geometry, the Fibonacci spiral. So, and then there's the whole overlay of the math starts getting ultra precise with certain satellite imagery of these precise locations, how it hones in. And so at one point, they had the math to like a certain decimal point. And then as satellite imaging measures, like let's just say the Sphinx or the Great Pyramid, then they're able to refine sort of this math and gain more decimal points. Well, a part of this code within the code is they start getting like not just locations, but like a verbal message. Like it's kind of broken up, I guess, but it's like sent from the future for humanity. Somehow they've worked the math, and with the decimal points that have presented themselves, it kind of shows how more advanced their mathematics is to where ours is. And so when you postulate how they could be X amount more advanced in their mathematics, they've kind of come up with this future number of where this message could have come back to the past. So, or these different points in time where messages could have been influenced from the future. And that date is like 8100. So like 8100 in the future is when the craft of unknown origin, or at least the message that it carried, is supposedly coming from. So
I'll just leave you with this, Dave. I know you got to go, and Nicole, I know you got to go too. So I'm just going to drop this for those who stayed. For those who stayed this long, God love you.
I love Rendlesham Forest. I could talk about it for the rest of my life.
So Chris Bledsoe came out recently and said, this is the crazy part, that we have craft, right? We have craft, and that there is some type of ancient language like Aramaic on one of the craft. I know I told you that, Nicole, recently.
I think we're gonna find these little clues popping up all the time.
Do you think it's related? Do you think Chris Bledsoe's Aramaic Jesus craft is related to the Rendlesham
Well,
craft?
why don't you re-ask me that question after you dive into light language a
Yeah,
little
okay.
bit and the symbols that can pop up and
Yep.
how, you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
think that could be an episode. I honestly think Chris Bledsoe has a very Christian point of view with this, so he's going to relate to that. And Aramaic Jesus, ancient Jesus experience, you know.
Had you
I
heard
would
that
understand
before?
why
Had you
Aramaic.
heard that before, though? Had you heard that Chris Bledsoe had touched the
Not
craft with
specifically
Aramaic on it?
Aramaic, but this like time of Jesus stuff keeps coming up with different experiencers that have been told things by certain people, like their DNA can be traced back to the time of Jesus.
Yeah,
Or
I've heard
now
that.
we have the writing from the time of Jesus. Like, that seems like a very sculpted narrative to me on some level.
I
So,
agree. I
yeah,
agree. That's why I wanted to know and fact check with you guys if you'd ever heard of it.
yeah. Not that specifically, but esque-ish things. Yeah, I guess.
Dave, had you ever heard that about there being Aramaic on a craft that we have?
I had heard of language, but I didn't know it was Aramaic.
Okay.
There's this stuff on a lot of crafts. There was symbols or writing on the Lonnie Zamora egg craft. There was craft allegedly on the Roswell craft, on almost everything. The Rendlesham craft. I don't know. I haven't heard about letters on those blue pulsating orbs with the vortex. I haven't zoomed in enough to see, the triangle or the tree of life.
It'll be interesting to see with Chris what's going to come next. What more will be revealed in his narrative. I'm interested in hearing what's going to come next.
I like all the experiencer symbols. Like, who's Grant all hot on right now? Emily?
Yeah. Emily, God, I have to
Trim? Is it Trim? One of the school kids turned artist.
Yes, he just sent that.
And yeah, her art that she does incorporates all this light language or symbols, and it's fun to hunt down that stuff. Like, that's when you find the Renaissance art that has like,
Yes.
the
Emily
trifecta
Trim.
and the three dots, or random orbs in the background, or the UFO with the beam of light, like the Holy Spirit dove. Like, there's just so much weird stuff.
You got it. Emily Trim.
Yeah, it's in there somewhere.
Good one.
That's her. We tried to speak with her years ago when we were doing this Artists and the Phenomenon series, kind of, where they get their inspiration, what comes through, if they could paint before their experience, if they could not paint, that sort of stuff. So
yeah,
we weren't able to contact her then. And we've heard that she's kind of yeah, that she doesn't really like being public. So, I mean, you can't blame her.
No, no.
So,
Dave's probably got to cut off for the night. It was great to be here. I'm sorry if things got confusing, guys. I'm glad that
we should have taken audience questions.
there
So,
was definitely questions in the chat.
is there one final question from anybody who was really pissed that we didn't take a question? We could let them sneak one in.
Todd Turner was very vocal. Todd Turner was like, lighten it up. Fire, fire, fire.
I told you, Todd Turner's my time traveling boyfriend. Like, leave Todd alone. He's fine.
There he is. I was wondering if he was still on. Look at that. Warp speed ahead.
He's not my boyfriend now. He's my boyfriend in the future, but I don't find it out till in my past. So, right?
T squared. I'm going to start calling him T squared.
I like that. Let's T squared.
T squared.
Welcome to
one final question from Joe Monk. This for you, Nicole. What kind of shampoo do you use?
Of course, it has to be hair related.
I use the shampoo that's green like alien blood. Pert Plus.
Is that a Lush? Is it a Lush product? Do you go there and get that from your local Lush store?
It's 2-in-1. It's really cheap. Yeah, Pert Plus 2-in-1. It's green like Vulcan blood. It's 3D chess time. Thanks, Joe. See you later, Todd. Dave?
I'm busy texting a source here. So,
what's your juice? You got a midnight.
Why don't you share right now? Put him on the spot, Nicole.
Spill it.
Oh, Linda McQuaid from New Brunswick. You don't have to say Canada around here. We know where New Brunswick is. Linda, you'll learn that is my pet peeve. That is my pet peeve. Because I'm Canadian too in BC. Hold on. Love you guys. New Brunswick,
I'm
Canada.
not Canadian. Everybody thinks I am. I'm not.
We're Alaska. We're New Canada up here.
New Canada. I like
Shannon,
that.
I don't know. I don't even know who that is. She might be in the wrong chat room. Mr. Turner's neighborhood. Oh, here's.
Oh no. Is this expanding? There's too many Turners. See how this timeline spreads out?
Ooh, Mr. Turner's neighborhood.
Is that like Mr. Rogers, where you like ride the train and go into Puppet Land?
Won't you be my neighbor? So, Dave, are you going to spill the beans? What's the source saying? Are we in trouble?
No, different source. Different source.
Good. It wasn't anybody we outed.
Yeah. This is
I haven't outed anybody. I've just told the story as it was told to me.
I haven't outed anybody.
Yeah, this is Team Canada. This is Team Canada I'm playing with.
Oh, Team Canada, represent.
Yeah.
Canada?
It's in typical Canadian fashion. It's way too vague to figure anything out.
It's kind of a Midwest thing too.
Dave's source is giving him a tuna casserole recipe. We're all looking for a good tuna casserole, Dave. So if you got it, spit it out, brother.
I cannot stand tuna casserole.
Do you boil the noodles beforehand, or do you put the water in with the noodles and cook it?
I don't know.
The real question is, what do you eat when you have breakfast for dinner?
No. There is no breakfast for dinner bullshit.
That's got to be something Mexican, right? Like
wars are fought over this, I think. Wars are fought over breakfast for dinner. So I typically think French toast is acceptable for breakfast for dinner.
Huevos rancheros. That's what I would say.
Mm, that's kind of anytime. Not gonna lie. Put a little Cholula on it, just a little couple drops every time you
Love it.
take a bite. Just
Just love it.
drop, bite, drop, bite.
Uh-huh.
I like it when you don't have to use silverware. So
You can get a lot with those crunchy tortillas if you you dig in there right.
bread is a vehicle. Dave, you were trying to convince me to get like 3 a.m. Taco Bell last night. Do you remember
I
that?
was. Yes. I would have driven the 9 miles for it.
Yeah, not me. What used to cost me $12 now costs me $30. So
Oh, yeah.
F off
That's
Taco
everything.
Bell. Yo quiero no más.
No mas.
No
On
más.
that,
No mas.
let's say goodnight, everybody. And Courtney, once again, perfect as usual. Nicole, awesome as usual. And our audience is so thankful to have both of you coming in to bring the information. You guys are just amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
joining,
Catherine.
Nicole. You really made it the dynamic trio here.
Fun. We did overtime tonight, big time. So thanks for hanging in there while we just, shot the cosmic shit.
This Todd Turner is killing me. Now he's bringing up Valiant Thor, and somebody brought Valiant to
Ooh,
me 2 weeks ago. I mean, he's hitting all the notes.
I don't know. Maybe does Todd know about the Victor videos? Let's try to stump Todd.
Todd definitely knows some stuff. It sounds like he's listening to my phone calls. It really creeps me out. He's like, everything he's saying is like the phone calls that I've been having over the last 2 weeks. So that's kind of spooky.
I like it. I don't think it's spooky.
Todd,
he
have
can
you been
mind
listening to my
read,
phone
mind reading.
calls?
We know there's mind reader operatives out there in our community. Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun dun dun.
Well, let's see. Maybe he'll come to Nevada.
Maybe.
Maybe our
Hey,
time traveling buddy will arrive.
We still have to get our source to Reno.
Oh, I'm going there. Did you know that? I'm going to go there, and I'm going to hopefully see him again if he'll have me.
You put your foot down with him, and you say we'll see you in Reno in May.
If I take him for a nice dinner, maybe I can convince him.
Well, I've already laid the paper.
Using dinners.
I take him out.
Moved up from lunch to dinner.
Yeah.
Guys, I want to say goodnight because I got to work in the morning, and Nicole's got to work in like 2 hours.
Good luck, both of you. I hope you get sleep and go to work.
Yes.
Good work.
You guys are the best. Keep it up. Rattle those cages. Set the birds free. Protect the unicorns.
Protect the unicorns. I'm all about it.
Love you guys. Bye.
All right, love you. See you.
All right, Court, you're the best. Good night, everybody, and have a great weekend. Don't forget about Sweet Robbie G and After Hours, Saturday and Sunday. And on Sunday before After Hours, Jessica Jones with the Cryptid Huntress off the trails. And thank you tonight to our super chatters. Lovely the Vera ×2, Louie ×2, W. Decker, Blue Cruise, Thomas, Debarino, Rob, Big Dog as well. Thank you for the love. I'll be back on Monday night. And who's my guest? I'll have audio then too, because that's what I'll be doing all weekend. Vanessa Denman, Ascension to Higher Consciousness. Oh, this is going to be good. Yeah. Who is she? She's a business intuitive specialist, quantum traveler, grid worker, galactic citizen, and galactic soldier. Oh my gosh, we may have a super soldier here. This is going to be fun. We'll see you all on Monday night. Good night, Mama Catherine. Love you. We'll talk to you in the morning. Mwah. And the rest of you, we'll have you see you on Monday. Yeah. Good night, everybody.